Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Gibby reps NJ. With the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? It's real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So, invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Til Mets Do Us Part, where we are live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single Wednesday, coming to you at 5:30 p.m. or thereabouts. And honestly, in this case, thereabouts is doing a lot of heavy lifting this week. John Saponaro coming to you from rainy, cold, kind of miserable Burbank, California. But I'm told that my co-host Matt Ibanez is dealing with something even worse back on the East Coast. And a lot of people in the comments are echoing that same sentiment. Apparently the weather is bad in New Jersey, out on Long Island, in New York City. So wherever you're residing, be safe, stay warm. Ibby, how you feeling, man?
I've had better days, John. This weather is, it's kind of wild how you go from one day it's 50 degrees, it feels like 80. Next it's raining, there's ice, there's snow. It's nonstop craziness. And now we're having like 40 to 50 mile an hour winds, which knocked out my power. So I apologize in advance, or I'm most likely going to be in and out as normal, as per usual. But I'm not going to try to use that as an ultimate excuse because it happens on the weekly. But I'm trying to get better. But this time, believe me, it's more so the weather. But it's Wednesday, red lights on. We're going to have some fun. 52 people so far and climbing. I expect that number to go up substantially throughout the show. Just remember, make sure if you're here, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way towards 1,300 subs. We want to make sure that we hit that number. And then, of course, maybe we can get another giveaway going and things like that. But we're working through some stuff. We're growing each and every week. And hopefully, if this is your first time here, you enjoy what you see. Hit that like on the video, sub the channel, because if you want to be part of this chat over here, which is always bumping, you got to make sure you're sub to the channel. But other than that, John, let's talk some Mets, man. Let's have some fun.
Let's get into the conversation. Of course, we have the comment pulled up right here from Charlie saying, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, echoing the sentiment from Ibby, of course, in the open. And really quick, shout out to the folks who are joining us. Already mentioned Charlie, Darren Rivera, Armand is in the house as well. We've got D, we got Top Bunk Sports. What up, Top Bunk? Zero Cool is here. I saw Douglas Barnes, Jeff Cohen, Brad. Try not to miss anybody, when we do this roll call right at the beginning. And of course, this number, like you said, is going to continue to grow. We got Paulie S. I saw Pantrice in the house. So many folks, a lot of familiar faces. Rosie K. We've got Ibby here. We got double posting coming from the show account.
Sorry.
My account, all kinds of stuff. J-Mac Customs saying fashionably late. Yes, indeed. Shout out to J-Mac Customs. Speaking of J-Mac, he and I had a little bit of a back and forth. Odd Villain is here. Stanley Babbage. So many folks. And like we said, that's going to continue to grow along the way. J-Mac and I had a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter. It was respectful, but of course,
okay.
No. J-Mac is the best. Friend of the show, of course, originator of the OMG sign. Shout out to J-Mac Customs. But it'd be sometimes people on Twitter are not my biggest fan, especially people on Mets Twitter, especially folks in the Mets Twitter community, which I did jump out of a long time ago, but now you're allowed to comment in these Twitter communities without being a part of these Twitter communities. Anyway, I raised a lot of hell when I said that basically there was no point in being, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's the first topic and it's topical. But I said there was no point in being sad about Jose Iglesias signing a minor league deal with the San Diego Padres, as John Heyman was the first to break early this morning. If you are over the age of 16 years old. Ibby, look, we've talked about Jose Iglesias a lot. Yeah, bye to OMG. BYE to OMG. Look, we talked a lot about Jose Iglesias and his potential there you go. Robert Murray broke it first. Thank you, Armand. I saw it from John Heyman, but of course, 3 hours later here on the West Coast. Ibby, look, you know that a lot of times I will say what I've got to say unabashedly, and that's going to annoy some people, and I get that. It's not for everybody. It is what it is. I did echo this sentiment that Odd Villain has right here, which is the only guy has the right to be upset is J-Mac Customs, which I did say to him. I was like, look, your connection to the player, your connection to the organization as a result of what happened last year is something that people like us, Mets fans, like Jay, can only dream of. What an unbelievable moment. We had him on the show just talking about it. So, like, of course, there are reasons to be sad for folks. My point was that for as good as Jose Iglesias was on the field last year, and he was terrific, and for as much as he helped the vibes of this team push them in the right direction, and he did, the odds of him repeating the on the field and the off the field that he was a part of last year are slim to none. So much so that he just signed his 5th minor league contract in his career. This is a guy who is 36 years old, who was on the team for 5 months. So obviously I'm being a bit hyperbolic when I say if you're under 16 years old, you can be upset about this. But my point is, if you're in those formative baseball years of a fan like we all were, I understand why this is a big deal. And there was one guy who was like, oh, I don't understand. So anybody who's a grown-up is not allowed to be excited about David Wright's number being retired this season. And I'm like, are you comparing Jose Iglesias to drafted and developed David Wright? David Wright, who grew up a Mets fan because of the Tidewater team in Norfolk. David Wright, who was on a Hall of Fame trajectory and spent his entire career here. David Wright, who was the captain of the Mets. David Wright, who made his major league debut when I was 17 years old, when I was still just a kid. There's an entire generation of people who are now adults, 16-year-olds, respectfully, never even remember. 16-year-olds right now don't even know David Wright as a baseball player. They were like 8 years old the last time he played a game or whatever it is. So my point is that you just have to put this stuff in proper perspective. And people don't like the way I say stuff sometimes because, you know, I do have a tendency. I do needle. I do poke. I do say a lot of, you know, but like, that's how I express myself. Maybe it's because I'm a comedian. Maybe it's because I'm a smart ass. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit of an asshole. Whatever it is. But it's like, you do have to understand where I'm coming from here. And when people turn around and they're like, well, what about David Wright? Can you be happy that he's getting his number retired? Of course. He might be the best position player that the Mets have ever developed, ever. And you're going to use him as the point of reference to Jose Iglesias? That's insanity. And I see this one here, Ibby. Hang on a second. I just lost it here in the comments, but it made so much sense. Oh, yeah, here we go. From Jeff Cohen. Reminds us of Aaron Loop. Great with the Mets. Team let him walk. Hasn't repeated that season since. That's a more fair comp for Jose Iglesias. It's Aaron Loop. It's not David fucking Wright. Are you out of your mind? So anyway. Yeah. Odd Villain, we got Ether playing in the background. Odd Villain saying, talk your shit, John. Look, bottom line is, I understand. Let's shout out to Top Bunk. John is an asshole, but that's the best part. Listen, I always said when I did comedy that I was an asshole, but I did it all with a smile on my face. So you knew that like a lot of it was exaggeration. A lot of it was hyperbolic. Like it was a way of being like a charming, endearing, friendly asshole. Like I just don't understand how some people who are full grown adults that don't have the connection that J-Mac does to this player and to the organization because of this player are like, oh my God, I'm devastated today. What? Why? No.
I mean, it does go back to other people, like with previous players, and this is something I know Carson's in the comments. He always hits on this, where it's like we fall in love with these. I'm not trying to put down Jose Iglesias as a subpar player. It's not my point, but the point is that as a fan base, we attach ourselves sometimes to players that are like, and we grow these, whether it's meant to be funny or whatever. It's like, I know that people were obsessed with Dom Smith, and there are other players of that ilk that people become obsessed with and think they're going to be something and they're not. So it's like, we've talked about Jose Iglesias, at length throughout this offseason, and I stick to what I've been saying, and that is I'm very thankful, and I'm never going to forget 2024. I'm never going to forget him, the concert, OMG, his defense, his timely hitting with runners in scoring position. Like, I'm not going to forget any of that. And I'm forever thankful for, like I said, my daughters singing the song and having fun with it. Like, I'm never going to forget those things. And I appreciate the time that was here. But baseball is a business, and you just have to move forward. You got to let it go. You got, like, someone in the comment, it might have been Brad in the comments saying, like, he was here, he did well, we didn't win anything. You move on. Like, that's it. Like, and the guy, as much as it sucks that he had a strong year and he has to, sign another minor league deal to get work elsewhere. But if he makes the major league roster, he gets whatever it is, $4 million. Like, good for him. And if you want to believe the Pat Ragazza report or not, where he says that he was offered a 1-year deal from the Mets and he turned it down, but there's back and forth about him saying that's not true or whatever you want to believe. It's to a point where it's a 36-year-old journeyman player. Enjoy the memories, enjoy the moments that were there, and just move on. Like, there's no reason to get upset over this or comp it to other players of much larger stature, like you were just mentioning, whether it be like the David Wrights of the world or anybody else. So I'm thankful. I appreciate his time here, but you can't have your cake and eat it too, Mets fans. And that is, you can't tell me that you want Jose Iglesias here, but at the same time, you want to see Luis Angel Acuna get playing time. And I use him as an example because I know that I'd be, talking to myself when it comes to the likes of a Brett Baty as an example, because everyone's going to shit on him and say, prove it. But everyone else says, no, I want Acuna. So I'll use Acuna as the example where it's like, well, you're not going to get more consistent playing time or a utility role for him if you bring back a Jose Iglesias. So it's like, you can't have it both ways. It doesn't work that way. So this is part of what, again, David Stearns has said, where it's like, I want to see what my young players can provide me, because it's about creating that wheel and churning and moving things forward. These guys have to find playing time at certain levels. So do you want to take away that playing time from a given player, be it at the major league level, at a utility role, or even at the minor league level from a starting role, where you're trying to keep a player like him, consistent in case you do need him to come up, which is what he did last year. You're taking time away from a young player. So it doesn't make sense. It's time to move forward. And again, no disrespect. Love the time that he was here. Thank you. But you have to move on, Mets fans. That's it.
Yeah, look, again, I'm a fan first, like everybody watching, like everybody listening, like everybody that I talk to on Mets Twitter. I'm a fan first, but it doesn't mean that you have to just have this blind allegiance to every good player that ever graced your team ever. It really doesn't. Like, when you look at it, and this is what I meant when I said you have to be an adult about it. And people are like, well, it's not my responsibility. I'm not the president of baseball ops, so I can just be a fan and I can just be emotional. But what you're doing then is you're setting yourself up for unnecessary hurt and drama. I loved Jose Iglesias here last year. I advocated for bringing him back under the right circumstances, but those circumstances never came to be. Those circumstances meant that you had to get one of Jeff McNeil or Starling Marte off of this team. And guess what? You couldn't do that because those contracts are immovable, because those contracts have become albatrosses. So they're bogging down the 26-man roster. So there isn't a way for the roster to remain flexible. You can't turn around and go out and spend money on guys like Jose Iglesias to be a person on your team to just fill one little niche where you might already have that ability to fill it in-house. Now, Ibby, you mentioned Acuna. I'll mention both guys. I'll mention Baty to be fair, the same way that you mentioned Acuna, because everybody knows that you like Baty and I don't like Baty. The fact of the matter is Baty is 25 years old. He's no longer a prospect at this point. He is barely a player. I think he's a quad A player. But the Mets need to find out if he is a quad A player. The Mets need to find out what he is, who he really is. David Stearns did not draft Brett Baty. The contingent that David Stearns brought in did not draft Brett Baty. Carlos Mendoza was not here when Brett Baty was drafted. So you have to understand that eventually, at 25 years old, even though I don't think he's going to be a player, I don't think he's good, but you have to find out. Why would you sign Jose Iglesias and block Brett Baty? And then on the flip side, why would you sign Jose Iglesias and block Luis Angel Acuna, who had a nice little cup of coffee with the Mets last year, who plays all of the same positions at a very high level that Jose Iglesias plays, plus he can play center field, and there are questions about whether or not your center fielders are going to hit enough, so he would be a valuable player to have on your roster as another player who can go out there and play some center field, and he's going to do it for a very, very low salary, which is a factor when you're already above the third luxury tax threshold, and you're a repeat offender, so, oh, by the way, every contract you sign is 110% on that deal. So Jose Iglesias' deal, if he makes the major leagues, is $3 million with $1 million in incentives. So the Mets sign that deal, and then he becomes a $8 to $9 million player. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. So when I tell people, and people got on me because they're like, this is the same thing. Don't tell people how to fan. Don't tell people how to fan. Don't tell people how to be fans. Some people just need to be told things point blank, because if you're out there and you're acting like this, and this is the only time that I ever see you interact on Mets Twitter, I don't know you in real life. If there's somebody like I know in real life, like J Mac Customs, I hate to keep using him as an example, but I know Jay. So Jay and I can have an actual conversation and we can have a respectful back and forth. If the only time I've ever interacted with you is on a nameless, faceless account on Twitter, which is the cesspool of the world that we live in, and you're sitting there spewing the dumbest thing I've ever heard, all I can assume is that you are a dumb individual who does not understand how this works. So people turn around and they say, oh, don't tell people how to fan. Some people need to be told for their own good. It's just the bottom line, man. And you know what? Listen, I also understand that being told, if that's my approach, that might not be what you want to hear. And that's fine. You don't have to listen to it. But I'm sitting here actually trying to help you through this transition of, oh man, I'm so upset about Jose Iglesias. Like, you should not be upset about a 36-year-old journeyman player who just had the best year of his life, who is never going to repeat that. You can remember it fondly. I do. You do. Everybody in the comments does. Everybody watching live does. Everybody does. But you don't need to be sad about it. You're wasting space in your life to be sad that Jose Iglesias isn't coming back, when also, Ibby, there was never a realistic chance that he was going to come back anyway. Before Madrigal, after Madrigal, there wasn't really, maybe if they didn't bring back Pete, there's probably room on the roster for him then. Or if they traded Marte, if they traded McNeil especially. But they couldn't. They didn't. And they brought back Pete, and Pete is better. I'm going to bring up this comment. First of all, shout out to a couple of you folks. Charlie saying he's an asshole, meaning me, but he's our asshole. Thank you. Armand saying John is an asshole with a heart. I do want to bring up this thing from Ken. Ken Thal saying,
Ken Thal's in the building. Careful.
He has a career 280 batting average. Great.
Okay.
So that's so valuable that he just signed his 5th minor league contract. Cool. And saying, why the fuck does he have to repeat the year? I said 270, 280 with great defense, and you're going to pay $9 million for that when you have a guy on the roster, at least one, maybe more, that can do that for league minimum. and then said, of course my post won't be posted. I make too much sense. Well, there you go. Your posts were posted.
You're posted.
You're allowed. Listen, you're entitled to have your opinion, Ken. I'm poking a little bit of fun, but you're entitled to have your opinion. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But I just don't think that's good team building. It's not. Everybody wants to talk about Nick Madrigal this, Nick Madrigal that. Nick Madrigal was a minor league deal brought in to compete potentially with the kids. Him getting hurt is bad for him. Maybe it doesn't change the math. They still wanted to see what Baty was going to do, what Acuna was going to do, and to a lesser extent, because of the injuries and because they're further behind, what Jet Williams is going to do and what Ronnie Mauricio is going to do. I didn't think that Nick Madrigal was really going to make this team, but nobody thought Jose Iglesias was going to make this team last year. He didn't get here until June.
No.
He was an afterthought, rightfully so. And Stearns does know what he's doing.
Yes, he does. And we'll talk more about David Stearns a little bit later because I have some thoughts when it comes to pitching. But only the Met fan base, as we are 21 minutes into this show, we are talking about other Mets fans being upset over a journeyman 36-year-old when it doesn't affect really the overall outlook of this team moving forward. We have a good team. It doesn't really change anything in terms of, win total, in my opinion. Maybe others feel differently, which is why they're complaining about it or saying things about it. But again, we're talking about an offseason where we spent $1 billion, and one of which was Juan Soto. And, we're seeing what Clay Holmes can do and what the pitching lab is doing for these other guys that we picked up as well. And here we are 22 minutes in, fighting off people that are complaining about a 36-year-old journeyman middle infielder that gave us everything he had last year. And now you're upset because he doesn't get to come back when it wasn't really part of the overall math when it comes to the sustainability and success that you continually want as a Mets fan, because you have to see what you have when it comes to the infield. And you all admit that we have a glut of middle infield prospect that we have to see what they can afford to do, because each year that goes by, they get older. And as John said before, once you get 24, 25 years old, you're no longer a prospect, man. You're no longer a prospect. So it's time to, find out exactly what certain guys can provide. And this is that time. And if it means you have to get rid of a Jose Iglesias, it's what it means, man. It's business.
This is a really funny one from Odd Villain. Oh my God, we lost Tom Seaver. Now this. and seriousness, shout out to Ken, because Ken said, I'm not upset. I just like different viewpoints. And I brought up Ken's.
You want to be the contrarian, fine. It's fine.
Listen, and I brought up Ken's points because in defense of Ken on this, and Ken, sincerely, shout out to you, because you made more points in the 3 comments that I brought up than anybody that I argued with on Twitter over this. In other words, saying, by going out there and Ken saying, I don't want him to have the same year, just let him hit 270, 280 and play good defense. That's a more succinct point than anybody online brought to my attention. So like from a standpoint of inviting different viewpoints, which we encourage on this show, to say what you're going to say in the comments and we'll talk about it and we'll get to that stuff. That's totally fine. It's not having another viewpoint is not the issue. I don't want everybody to agree with me. I don't need everybody to agree with me. We don't want everybody to agree with the two of us on this show. And we're happy to bring up the debate portion of it. But it's just frustrating when you look at this. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Oh my God, what are we going to do now? How could we ever succeed without this player? A player that a year ago at this time, half of the Mets fans didn't even know about, Ibby.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes annoying to me.
Yeah, and it's complaining to complain, it's bitching to bitch, and I just feel that it is something to latch on to because people are bored and they just want something to complain about, which is what happens a lot of times when nothing is going on. It's kind of in that area of the spring where, we're like we were a couple weeks ago. Like we said, we're excited that baseball's back, but we also said that we know it's going to wear thin quickly and we just want real baseball to be here. And we're working our way through. We're kind of in that spot right now. There is still some stuff to talk about, but when things like this come up, it adds that, that gasoline to the fire where it's just, people want to run with something and then, it becomes a talking about, and other things as well that have happened over the last 24 hours when it comes to this fan base that got angry at a certain person, which I'm not going to say the name. It's not needed. Maybe we'll hit on that towards the end of the show. But yeah, it's not needed. And there are better ways to utilize your time and your overall effort when it comes to speaking about the team that you love.
I do love this one from Brad. Will OMG sign wear a Mets cap in Cooperstown? It's like that's the kind of thing that I do think, Odd Villain saying OMG retirement ceremony next summer. And listen, it's dope, especially for J-Mac, that the OMG sign is in the Baseball Hall of Fame right now, that it's on display. Like, that matters. That's so cool. And Met fans should be proud of it. Look, as a joke, my girlfriend and I built an ofrenda to Grimace in our kitchen. We had this like empty shelf that we couldn't reach above our sink because we have an LA apartment that was built probably in the late 60s, early 70s. So these really decorative, high up, ornate shelves. And we're like, oh, you know what we'll do? On the top one, we'll put a framed picture of Grimace throwing out the first pitch. And we have all these Grimace memorabilia. And we bought these like fake Grimace colored purple candles. Like, it's okay to have fun. It's okay to enjoy it. We're not tearing that whole thing down because the Grimace Mets were last year and we're on to 2025. But like, it'd be different if the Mets were actually like using that same stuff that they used, the players on the field, for motivation, using all of that stuff again into this year. So, it's just understanding where certain things belong. And I guess, I know somebody quoted me earlier talking about the lightning in a bottle, taking the cap off and letting the lightning go, which has become a cliche of mine. But Ibby, it's also just important to realize like when things belong in a time capsule. And that's okay. Yeah. You put it in the time capsule, you bury it, and you remember it fondly moving forward. And I think this is a really good one from Douglas Barnes. And this is at the heart of what I was getting at. And I know this will ring true with you. People have more love for Iglesias than they do for Beltran.
I started that because I got angry because it's true. It's 1000% true. And it drives me up a wall just thinking about it. From a perspective of what was provided for.
And it should.
It's ridiculous. And like to the point you were just making, I just want to get it up before I forgot. It's like there's a reason why things like a lot of us 90s kids, things like that, we love our nostalgia, but when you think back on things, you think more fondly of it. But when it comes to light now and you see those things, you're kind of like, it just doesn't work. Like if you rewatch something, maybe it doesn't ring the same way. When you bring something back, like a reboot or whatever, to try to mimic what you had at one time, it's like, it doesn't work. It's just, it doesn't feel the same. And we said this at the start of the offseason, and I'll say this as my closing point on it. It's like, it was the opening chapter. It's what it was. It was a fantastic start, and it's time to build and lose gimmicks and become a winning team. That's all you're focusing on. It's just winning ball games. Okay. I'm not saying you can't have fun. Clearly the guys are having fun in the dugout and everything, but you don't need to have that be the central focus. I think the central focus, as Juan Soto has said, was you want things to be quiet. You want things to like not be an issue. Go out there and win ball games. And it's like, that's 100% true. Just go out there and win ball games. And I guarantee you, once this team starts playing actual games and winning ball games, all this stuff will be far in the background. Then finally it'll be allowed to be laid to rest, if you will, and be remembered as a fond memory.
And honestly, I don't even care about the gimmicks perspective of it. My point is like, just allow each season to be what it is, and maybe a new gimmick will pop up, right? Like, I don't care if there is a gimmick, just let it happen naturally. Yeah. Like the Grimace thing happened so weirdly and organic, and the Jose Iglesias, and listen, I don't want to be misconstrued here. Jose Iglesias is not a gimmick. He is a human being ball player who made actual tangible contributions to the Mets winning games on the ball field. Him and Grimace, not the same thing. I'm not equating them. However, he transcended because of his other career, because of his pop star nature, because he's a singer-songwriter and all of this stuff. He transcended just what was on the ball field. And that part of it became this time capsule kind of gimmicky thing that carried with the ball player himself. But That happened organically. The Grimace thing happened organically. And you could argue, Ibby, both of those things not only happened organically, but accidentally. No one knew. People said it was cringe. If you go back far enough and you look on Twitter and you look at Jose Iglesias' first week with the Mets, when he first got called up, they were talking to him in the dugout, or excuse me, in the clubhouse. And he mentioned that he had a song coming out. And that was kind of the first time people heard of Candelita, from a Mets fandom perspective. And some people, a lot of people, go back and look at the SNY Twitter account. This is a joke. This guy's not focused on being a ball player. What is this gimmick? Why is he talking about this here? And now you find those people, oh my God, Candelita's not coming back. What are we going to do? I didn't care when he did it. I didn't care when he promoted himself. The guy is closer to the end of his career than he is to the beginning of his career. And I hope that he goes on to have a massive career as a singer. I don't know if he will. I hope he does. I hope he wins Grammys. I hope it's the best thing in the world. Yeah. He's a great guy. But understand that some of these same people that are now crying were dumping on him for this. And that's where I get frustrated. It's not in the Kenthals who are like, hey, you know what? This guy, just let him hit 280 and let him play great defense. He's important to this team. I would pay $9 million for that contract if it were up to me. Fine. That's a fair view. I'm not going to put that view down. But the people who are like, oh my God, what are we going to do without him? He's our spark plug. That's over. That year is over. And again, people are going to say they don't want to be told how to fan by me, and that's fine. But that's over, and save yourself the drama by just being a little bit more mature about it and move on. That's all I'm trying to say. Speaking of move on, a couple comments on this, and then we will move on with the conversation. First, from Edward Wall saying, I love what Jose did for us last year. He was the spark that lit our team, but we really need to get our youngsters in there. We have no room for him. Please, let's just let it go. And Carson, who I wanted to make sure I got his comment in here because Carson, great content creator over at Mets Weekly, friend of the show. We're a friend of that show, but also this is, somebody who is unabashedly himself as well, and saying that Mets community, meaning the one on Twitter, the Mets community, has no sense of sarcasm, satire, or hyperbole. They just go straight to the gun, to the knife fight level of reaction, something he never experienced before. So it's true. And look, I know that Twitter is not the place for nuance, but it's just insane that somebody doesn't get it from a perspective of seeing just what I don't even know how to say it. I know Twitter is not the place for nuance, but it is just strange to me that there are so many people that just don't even, they wouldn't know nuance if it came up and it bit them in the ass. I guess that's all I'm going to say.
You got to remember, whenever you post something on Twitter, it's more so the second you post it, no matter how much work you put into something or thought you put behind something or the nuance that you're trying to work within a given post, a person has already made up their mind the second they see it. There's no point in trying to go back and forth because they've already made up their mind. You can't change somebody's mind, no matter how much you say, oh yeah, I see what you're no, they don't. No one's listening. Everyone's just locked in on their own thought. So when you say things, it doesn't really hit home because they've already made up their mind and they're saying, I'm not moving from this. And people are very stubborn on that, which is why, as people notice, I don't mix it up that much anymore when it comes to people, because people suck. Simple as that. People suck.
Yes, I agree with that. Jump back into the comments here. This good one from Top Bunk saying, new spark plugs happen every season. Mets will be fine without Iggy. I think that's a really good point.
Absolutely.
And then Domenico saying, this sounds like a solo show. LOL. Sorry about that. I was taking a lot of the air up, Ibby, on that first one. It's something that got me charged up, and it's not just because
I figured you would because you had a lot going on when it came to Twitter today. I thought you were going to have a lot to say on this. And I said my piece, and I have nothing else to really put into it. So I wanted John to get, everything off his chest so it allows him to relax. So yeah. Sorry, I'm being called. Sorry.
Good one from Carlos. Twitter is not a medium to have discussions. It is a medium built for arguments. Very fair. Very fair point. Let's move on to the other part of it, which is a little bit old news here as the Mets kind of officially turn the page on some old friends here with regards to the 2024 team. Jose Quintana also signs a deal, not with the Mets. Another guy that I was completely not in favor of bringing back, especially at the Mets' current payroll position, because any deal signed is 110% on that deal. And you have to remember, again, there was a huge chunk of time where Jose Quintana was in danger of being DFA'd last season. That's how bad he was. He was borderline unpitchable. The Mets do have injuries, Ibby, and the Mets do need to cover for those injuries. But I think right now, the depth that they have is enough to cover in the short term. And like we said last week with our guests from Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast, it's important to not shoot your shot and overreact to an injury with Sean Manaea, who might only be a couple weeks, and an injury with Montas, who, albeit might be a couple months. You don't want to shoot your shot on Jose Quintana. Take a bigger swing at the deadline. Go out and get Dylan Cease. Go out and get Michael King. Go out and get whomever. Pick your flavor of pitcher that you like that might be available, Luis Castillo, whoever it might be. Take your shot then. You can get through the beginning of the season. You're not going to lose the pennant in April. You're not going to lose out on a playoff spot. This team is not, I know it doesn't excite people from a starting pitching standpoint with the injuries especially, but this team is not going to be bad, Ibby, in the first couple weeks without Manaea, first couple months without Montas, which is why I bring this up from Select Global, who I think is a brand new commenter. Welcome to the show. What is the current Mets pitching rotation with the injuries?
Sounds like a car. It sounds like a car lot. Select Global.
Welcome to Select Global.
What's current Mets rotation? So what we're looking at? We got Senga, we got Peterson, we got Holmes, we got who else? McGill.
I think if you
Blackburn.
put a gun to my head, I think it's very clear that Clay Holmes is going to be the opening day starter. Part of that is because
Houston.
Yes, because Holmes has been working out longer than anybody else. Holmes is also, despite the fact that he's making the transition from the bullpen to the starting rotation, is not coming off of an injury the way Senga is. The other factor is if Senga pitches game 2 in Houston, that lines him up to pitch the home opener, which I think Mets fans and the Mets organization want. Also, if Senga goes 2 or 3, that allows him over the first month or so to have extra days built in without the Mets having to go to a 6-man rotation, which right now we talked about last week and the week before. They don't really have that luxury, especially with the injury to Manaea. So, Ibby, I think it's going to be Holmes, Senga, Peterson, and then some combination of McGill and Blackburn. I think Tyler McGill, nobody wants to see him. I understand that. But Tyler McGill, I don't think anybody's going to argue with me. And I'm not a huge fan. I'm tired of him too. But I don't think there's anybody. I don't think anybody. You can tell me if you think I'm off base on this. But I think it's pretty clear Tyler McGill has better stuff than Griffin Canning. Yes,
no,
or no?
He does. He does.
Okay.
Yeah, he does.
Now you could argue whether or not he knows how to use that stuff to the best of his ability or whatever the case may be. That's an argument that you can make, but Griffin Canning also coming off a brutally bad year last year, and I think he is better suited, Canning that is, to be the Trevor Williams type, the long man in the bullpen, the spot starter. So, and I think that Paul Blackburn, while he doesn't have great stuff, I think his stuff is probably a tick better than Griffin Canning's, maybe, but he does have a better track record of success in the major leagues. So I think if we're being fair, everything being equal, I think you are going to see Holmes, Senga, Peterson, Tyler McGill, Paul Blackburn, and I think Griffin Canning will be in the bullpen. And I think Griffin Canning will be the guy who is the first called upon if and when Tyler McGill does what he does, which is, oh shit, he can go 3 innings, but now he's, can't go deeper into the games. And I'm not saying
pitches.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is sexy, Ibby, and I'm not saying it should be, but I think it's enough. I do. I think it's enough to start the season.
Yeah, to start the season, I think it's enough. And I know people are upset, and whether we want to dive into the whole Stearns and pitching lab conversation now, we can hold off on that for a little bit. But the only thing I'll say is, like, you have to just allow this process to play out a little bit. I know people automatically, I know Pantrese, I'm sorry, not Pantrese, Rosie K was over in the comments before saying, it's going to be rough looking at the likes of McGill and Blackburn pitch while Manaea is out. And while I understand thinking about that on paper right now is a little daunting for some fans, I think you got to remember also that this offense should operate a lot differently this year. And look, are there going to be times where it's going to be frustrating if your team scores 6 runs and you lose 7-6 or 8-6? Is that going to happen? It's a possibility that can happen for sure. But there's also, you have to take the flip side also of, if, this team gives up 5 runs because the pitching isn't there, maybe the bullpen can lock it down at 5, but the offense is going to score 7. So I do think that there are ways that the Mets can work through this while, not killing themselves too much in terms of the overall starting pitching or what, I should say killing the bullpen, I should say, because I do think the offense is going to help them a good portion of this rough patch that they're going to be going through with Manaea out. But I think that I've been a lot more calm than others in this situation where I really trust what's going on with this Mets pitching lab and the results that it could potentially yield. Because when you look at all the underlying metrics, everything under the hood, it's looking really good. And it's looking really good for a lot of guys people haven't heard of. So I'm very excited about our bullpen as well and being able to churn guys and keep guys healthy so it doesn't burn out if those back-end starters that we're talking about, the McGills, the Blackburns, the Cannings of the world, don't give us enough length. I do think that this bullpen can churn a little bit and protect us in the short term, at least, until the likes of Manaea and Montas get back.
I do agree. And look, there is something to be said, and no one's sitting here and saying, yeah, BG's point. And I think BG is a new commenter. Welcome to the show, BG. Saying Canning, this is the same guy who has a career 4.78 ERA and a losing record. That Canning, yes,
that guy, yeah,
absolutely. Not taking anything away from that. Also, according to ERA, was the worst starting pitcher in baseball last year. Absolutely. However,
as was Severino. Just saying.
Correct. That's my point. What I was going to say was the Angels. No, you're fine. Yeah. The Angels are one of the worst run organizations in the sport. Definitely bottom 3. Maybe you can make a case they are the absolute worst. It's hard to do that when you got the White Sox doing what they're doing and Colorado doing some of the things they're doing, whatever. But the Angels are bad. And not only are the Angels bad at baseball, they're bad at the stuff around building a baseball team. The Angels had at one point the inarguable 2 best players in the sport and didn't make the playoffs once with those 2 people because they could not figure out a way to get more out of other players. They could not find a way to improve on the margins. They could not find a way to build off of the floor of their team. I understand that Mike Trout's inability to stay healthy was a factor in that, but they also gave Anthony Rendon what is going down as the worst contract in the history of Major League Baseball, not hyperbole. So yes, BG, and who is saying, I do agree with the Angels being a horrible team and organization right now. And my point is, the reason why I say all of that is because Canning is going from an organization that is that bad, that also Ibby has a terrible track record of developing pitchers, to a team that now has a pitching lab, is doing the state-of-the-art things that teams who are at the forefront of developing pitching and helping pitchers recapture something. The Mets are in that spot now. So do I think Canning is going to become some revelation? No. But do I think he will be better than he was last year? Absolutely. And do I think he'll be better than he ever has been in his career? I think there's a chance. I do. I think there's a better than average chance. You're muted.
I don't think we're going to be sitting here saying how, Griffin Canning is this revelation. I do agree with people when it comes to the comp with him and Adrian Hauser, like that type of arm. Hopefully he can do better than Hauser, or maybe it's going to be the same thing. But to the point that John was just making also, and it's hysterical because when you talk about a poorly run organization, remember, we're only a couple of years removed from the Angels having 20 picks in the draft. They used every single one of those picks on pitching. Every single one was a pitcher. And I watched a TikTok, and I wish I can shout out the guy who did the video because I thought it was fascinating. He ran down every single one of those players within that system. And I'd say like 70% of them are not even out of A ball or have already flamed out of the league, out of baseball. And the other ones that have hit, they've hit to the tone of like a 4, 5, 6+ ERA. So of those 20, maybe 3 made it. One which made the major league roster, I think it was Chase Silseth, who has had a rough go, to say the least, of being like a 4-5 type of pitcher. But that shows you they don't know how to really develop guys. We'll see what happens with Canning. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's the next Nolan Ryan. That's not the point. The point is, I think that with better help around him, they can maximize what he's actually good at and remove the things that he was clearly bad at.
Yeah, and that's all I'm trying to say. And this is a good one from Ken Thal saying, can he be worse? And no, and that's also why, I am pushing this logic of, do I think he'll be better than last year? I do. Do I think he'll be better than he ever has been in his career? I think there's a pretty good shot of that because I trust David Stearns and I trust the Mets pitching lab and I trust what the Mets are building more so than I trust whatever the hell the Angels are doing out here in Southern California. That is part of my point. This is a good one. Griffin Canning is going to drop a song and it will become our rally cry from Carlos Ramos. Listen, if Griffin Canning's making a song, I guarantee you it's not going to be a song that I'm going to be interested in. I could just, I just feel like, I feel like that's where we're at. Ibby Armand saying John Heyman just tweeted the Quintana contract and he DM'd it to you over.
Sure, I got you right here.
What do we got on the terms of the Jose Quintana contract with Milwaukee?
Jose Quintana looks like he's making, what is it, by 3.8, 2025 opt-out. I'm sorry, 2025 opt-out, 2026, $2 million, 2025 mutual option, 2026 for 15. Oh, Jesus. Mutual option for 2026 for 15 million or a $2 million buyout, all deferred. And then, of course, incentives based off of innings plus a
Maybe in the middle of running through the contract terms and his Wi-Fi crapped out. It's all good. I'll take you guys through for a little bit. Ibby will get back. Give me the unknowns rather than retreads like Canning and McGill from Ricardo. Ricardo, listen, it's a fair sentiment. It is. But I think with the way the Mets are constituted right now, you're going to get a little bit of both. You're going to get some retreads. You're going to get some unknowns. I think that the way we look at where the Mets are in terms of, they don't want to rush Brandon Sproat, but I think you're going to see Brandon Sproat. I think we look at what happened with a guy like Blade Tidwell and the fact that he's got electric stuff, but the walks are a problem and the numbers in AAA are a problem. You can't really rush him, although he might wind up being a reliever at the next level. Who knows? So you are going to see some of the unknowns. You are going to see some retreads as well. You're going to see a little bit of both. And you know what? Look, I'm not trying to make excuses for the Mets here because I do understand this sentiment as Ibby comes back in, but it takes a village to build out these teams. So I think there's a good chance that the Mets might carry a guy like Jose Urena, who they signed to a minor league deal. Mm-hmm. Jose Urena might make this team, especially if, you look at AJ Minter. He's a little slow recovering from the injury. You could see a situation where maybe he starts the season on the 10-day IL and or a short IL stint for pitchers a little bit longer. Starts with a short IL stint, works back into games in AAA. And, you have a guy like Urena on the team for a little bit. And look, does that excite you? No. But again, it takes all kinds to build out, especially a pitching staff in modern Major League Baseball, Ibby. But even just a 26-man roster, it takes it takes the retreads, it takes the unknowns, it takes a little bit of both.
I just want to say that I was fine and my Wi-Fi was doing fantastic until we started talking about the damn Angels, and it just goes to shit. So no more talking about the Angels. That's what ruined me.
Listen. I'm gonna. Michael says Lucky Ibby isn't an agent, and I think that was because of the way that you were trying to describe this contract. It was very confusing. I love you.
Sorry.
But it was not great. So can you give us the terms of that contract?
Sorry, again? One more time.
I hate to put you on the spot because I know you were reading it for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, I'm gonna put it in the chat so it reads better. Just give me 1 second. I have it right here.
All right, because it's important because I'm trying to follow that. Here we go. Okay.
There's a lot going on in that, but there you go.
So this is the contract. So it's $3.8 million and some change.
Right.
Plus, what is P and A?
You're wondering why I was struggling. I was just trying to read things across and seeing what I understood.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is this the way that John Heyman tweeted this?
Yes. Well, obviously it's more bunched up and not spaced because it's on the chat. But this is how everything was posted. Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's a $3.8 million deal in 2025.
Opt out 2026.
Opt out 2026 for $2 million, but there's a mutual option
for 2026 for
$15 million.
With a $2 million buyout. All
you know
deferred.
What? That's fine. I gotta go ahead and I gotta go ahead and retract what I said to you, Ibby, where I gave you some shit for reading this.
I'm sorry, I was just reading it as
because this is insane. This is not the way a normal person would type. And I think now that we have it on the screen for everybody to see, I think we can understand why Ibby maybe had a little bit of trouble with this. Because
I'm sorry.
This reads like the rantings of a serial killer. This is like a manifesto. There are so many numbers here, and there are so many just like shorthand. Just write 3.8 million. Why would you write 3,859,400? Why would you write that, John Heyman? You psychopath. John Heyman needs to maybe retire. That's some shit, honestly.
See, Brad with a better one here, saying it's $2 million salary for 2025, $2 million buyout on a $15 million mutual option for 26, and a $250 roster bonus. The incentives are $125 for each of 16, 18, 20, 22, 24 games started. So
thank you, Brad.
There you go. Simple, to the point. Thank you. And I apologize for my, not well reading, I guess, if you will, from before.
It's okay. Honestly, that's insane. Yeah, Brad, Keith McPherson broke John Heyman. Carlos saying, is that a new note from the Zodiac Killer? And Odd Villain, this motherfucker acted like the killer from Seven. Yo, that is insane. I was like, Ibby, what? Like, honestly, I was about to hit you with it, and then you froze, and I was like, why is Ibby reading it like that? That is insane. Michael saying, what's in the box, Heyman? What's in the box? Okay, so now that we know the contract details, and I'll pull this back up from Brad here, just from a Mets perspective, I'm not giving Jose Quintana that contract. There is not a snowball's chance in hell that I am giving Jose Quintana that contract.
Hell no.
And tell me in the comments if you disagree.
I know someone in the comments before also said when it came to Quintana, it was like, oh, he was the best pitcher that the Mets had. And whoever said this, by the way, I'm not like poking fun or
I think it was, I honestly think it was Ricardo who said that best pitcher on the Mets from the Oakland game on, which is true.
And it's fine. But when I think of Quintana, I'm thankful for what he was able to provide because I was the one on this show championing to put him on a rocket and blasting him off into space because he was doing so horrible and I wanted him gone. And he turned things around the second half and helped this team when it mattered most. But at the same time, I also think about where I want this team to go. And I think about what he's going to have to do or what this team's going to have to do from a pitching perspective when it comes to facing the bigger dogs of the NL. And that's the ones that are in our division, that being the Phils and the Braves, those being out of the division, that being the Dodgers that everyone views as the top. That's the Diamondbacks. That's the Padres. Like, it's a lot of teams out west. And I still think the teams in the Central, like the Brewers, can be tough. I think that the Reds could be a tough out at some point. Even the Cubs for this season, at least. Like, I see how Quintana pitches. It has to be perfect. It's nibbling. It's dancing around. But when you're facing teams that are better when it comes to plate approach, like the Dodgers, they spit on what he's throwing, which is why he struggled in that game against them. You have to have guys that can strike people out. And based off of the numbers that are being produced by the pitchers that the Mets have in-house right now, by said pitching lab, it's showing that they have the stuff. And we always talk about needing stuff, striking people out, having to attack hitters, attack the strike zone. And it's hard for a Quintana to attack the strike zone because he's throwing low 90s.
Yeah, not barely, and barely. He's really like 88, 89.
That's why I'm not giving a guy like this the money, whether it was based off of the 110% tax or not. Again, you have to aspire for more. You have to have better things. And someone's going to say to me, "Oh, well, you're talking about the likes of Clay Holmes, who's not really established as a starter, or Frankie Montas, or any of these other guys." And it's like, yeah, but I know that they throw harder. I know that they have the stuff. I will take that risk with said pitching lab as opposed to a soft tossing veteran who, yes, I have to now account for said tax. I'm not giving them that much money because there's no need to. And I know money's not a thing for this team because they're paying $97 million in taxes, which is more than 3 franchises in the sport. But still, it doesn't matter. You still have to be smart about how you go about doing things. Can you spend this money on a pitcher? Sure. Are you spending on Jose Quintana? No.
Yeah, I think this is a good question from Odd Villain saying, if we didn't sign Frankie Montas, would you sign Quintana to that deal? I still wouldn't for everything that Ibby just said. But I'm a guy, I like better stuff. I like guys who have the ability to get you out in the zone. Guys who can miss their location and still get outs against the elite players. Because when you're facing the Dodgers, when you're facing the Braves, when you're facing even the Phillies, there are going to be players that if you miss your spot in your Quintana, they're going to hit the ball 600 feet. But if you're Montas with a bigger fastball and better breaking stuff and whatever the case may be, you might miss your spot a little bit and you still might be able to get outs. You might be able to get guys to swing through stuff. That's why I was a big proponent. You mentioned Severino last year, or the Severino contract last year, and how bad he was the year before that with the Yankees. And I hate to keep bringing up the conversation that we had, but we had 2 conversations with a former pitcher and a former position player at the Queens Baseball Convention last year after the Mets signed Severino, and they both said there is no way that Severino, who still has one of the best fastballs at that point for a starter in Major League Baseball and some of the best movement on said fastball, that he would pitch to a 6.65 ERA with that stuff without tipping the pitches. And they were like, he's going to rebound. And that's why in my bold prediction show heading into last season, I said he was going to cut his ERA in half. And I'm going to give myself a win on that because he just about did it. He went from like 6.65 to 3 and change. And I think that that's exactly where you'd want him to be. So again, just give me the stuff upgrade. Now, having said that, I talked about it on this show, and we talked about it on the show with Mets Weekly where we did our grades. I found the Frankie Montas signing to be a little confounding even still. And I rated it, whatever I said, like a D+ or a D- because he's already hurt. And it's so far not a great signing as far as returns go. That said, I would still do it for the upside over Quintana because to me, Quintana has no upside. Jeff Cohen saying it's really a $4 million contract for Quintana, which is fair because you look at it, $2 million this year with the $2 million buyout. But any number that you look at for any of these Mets players, it would be double that. No fucking thanks, to put it in Pantrese's words. So, Ibby, I think you agree. I'm not giving Quintana that deal, even if we don't sign Montas.
No, I'm not. No,
I don't think you can.
I'm pushing for somebody else, and I would have to look back at what players were available at the given time. But I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't do that.
I couldn't. I just couldn't conceptualize doing that. So we're right at an hour or thereabouts. I think now's a good time to head into the break. When we come out of the break, we have a lot more to talk about with regards to some of the players who are here, are members of the Mets, and what they're doing in spring training, most notably Jose Siri, Brett Baty, and one Max Kranick. We have to talk about all 3 of those players and more. If you're watching for the first time, you're like, what is this break? I don't want to sit through a break. Don't worry. It's just a quick 30-second ad spot that we need for the audio version of this show and a quick way to reset the conversation. But if you are watching, go ahead and hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It's also a great opportunity. If you're watching over on Twitter and your comments aren't getting seen and you want to make sure they get seen, you can switch in this 30 seconds from Twitter to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and make sure that your voices are heard. Oh, and like it says on the bottom of the screen, Super Chat's now available. So if you want to make sure that your comments are heard and your questions are answered, go ahead and hit that Super Chat. It's John Saponaro. It's Matt Ibanez. It's Til Mets Do Us Part. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Twitter. We'll be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter like we are each and every single week. We did add a couple of accounts for you to go ahead and access us live. I think I added my account to the mix, which we did not have before. So a lot of good stuff going on in the world of Til Mets Do Us Part. Ibby, before we get back into the conversation about the Mets, talk Jose Siri, talk Brett Baty, talk Max Kranick, let's talk very quickly about our friends over at Independent Safes.
That we can do, John, over at Independent Safes, independentsafes.com. Independent Safes are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes, fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit independentsafes.com today for security that stands strong. And I want to put John Heyman in the safe this week for embarrassing me on my own damn show on a Wednesday when the red light's on, making me sound like a fool in front of the audience and the people that come here to listen to us speak about this team. I'm sorry, everybody, but I blame John Heyman, and he's going in the safe this week. We're throwing him in, locking it, throwing away the key. Into the river he goes. Independent Safes. Make sure you tell him Til Mets sent you. They'll hook you up. $99, free shipping. You're spending $99 regardless, so you're getting the free shipping. But tell them we sent you. They'll take care of you.
Shout out to the over 200 folks that are joining with us here on the live stream. And of course, the live stream is the best way to get your questions, your comments, your concerns, all of that stuff out there. We can all address it in real time. Not only myself and Ibby, but everybody in the comments as well. Of course, we can't get to each and every single comment, although we try to get to as many as we can. So it's the best way to make sure that you are a full-fledged participant in the show. But we understand that not everybody can do that all the time. Not everybody can do that at any time. It's a lot to ask for 2 hours of your time a week to talk Mets. We appreciate everybody that does that, everybody that does that every single week, and everybody that does it whenever they can. But we understand that not everybody can do that all the time. So once again, if you subscribe, turn notifications on, you'll never miss the opportunity to know when we're going live or when a new episode drops after the fact, to make sure that you never, ever, ever miss a moment of Til Mets Do Us Part. Carlos Ortiz, yeah, I remember when the break was only 10 seconds.
That's
Problem
an OG
is,
right there.
That is an OG right there. Respect. You know what? Problem is, me and Ibby just realized like 10 seconds was complete nonsense. We just couldn't.
Need a little bit more.
We couldn't reset in time. So we were like, you know what? Let's up it to 20. And then eventually it was like, well, 20 just seems dumb. We should just do 30 seconds. That's enough of an actual exhale, and we can move on in the conversation. Ibby, so there's a couple different ways we could take this right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 players, I think, of note that are making noise, and I've already alluded to them. I don't know which one you want to talk about first, but they all are going to have some kind of role on this team. And I think right now, Wednesday, March 5th, I think all 3 of them have a very good chance of being on the opening day roster. Now, for one of those players that was never going to be in jeopardy, that's Jose Siri. Jose Siri was going to be a part of this team. Say what you want about his batting average and his propensity to strike out, but this is a guy who plays elite, bold, underlined, italicized, elite defense, and has a tremendous amount of pop. And like Carson says, has a tremendous amount of aura. Mets also went out and traded for him. So he was going to be here. He's going to play a part. He's a younger, more athletic, more powerful version of Harrison Bader. He was always going to be on the team. But I think Brett Baty is making enough noise, even though I don't like him, to put himself firmly in the conversation to be, if not the guy who is on the team all season, at least the guy who gets this opportunity to be the 26th man on the roster to start the year. And it's very clear now that Max Kranick is firmly in the Mets' plans to open the season with the team. So which one of those guys do you want to start with and where? No, I do not. Get that off the screen. Get that off the screen.
I love that I figured out how to do this now. I can have a lot of fun with that. I want to honestly, because it's on the tip of my tongue, I want to talk about Kranick to start.
Okay.
Mainly because I think it works best because we just got done talking about the pitching and starting pitchers and where things are. And the returns that we're seeing so far from this pitching lab and all that's going into it. I don't know if you guys follow this account on Twitter. I just recently found it. Maybe it's been here for a while, and based off of the follows, it has. So, like, I was the one that was behind. Pitch Profiler on Twitter is fantastic when it comes to really breaking down everything that it goes into a pitcher's start, when it comes to all the underlying things that might bore some people, but I know someone like Carson would love stuff like that when it comes to like IVB and vertical break and all this stuff plus and everything. So all the things that keep on being put out by said account, Pitch Profiler. And when it comes to the Mets pitchers that are putting out results this spring, he is gushing over everything that is coming out when it comes to these arms. And Max Kranick is a big proponent of this entire thing because everything he's putting out to this point looks incredible. So we had heard about Kranick last year. He was banged up. Things didn't go that well, but he's come out firing so far. He's got 5.1 innings pitched, no earned runs. He's got 6 strikeouts. He looks as though he can be called upon at some point. Now, look, it's very early, and we'll see how people go about handling their business once the season starts and staying healthy. But he looks like someone that could be a potential high leverage type of guy. And people are clamoring for him to be a potential starter, but it does seem to be that he is off that track right now when it comes to being a starter, and they're focusing more on the reliever route, which is probably best for his health. The velocity has upticked from last year as well because he can just go out there and fire for an inning or two. The stuff looks even sharper. So when I see someone like Kranick, I think it definitely paints a picture because, as we have in the scroll, and it came about a couple days ago, that Sean Reed-Foley is no longer going to be a part of this team. He was outrighted. So I think, in my opinion, where about a month ago, the two of us, when we were talking about bullpen, we had Sean Reed-Foley in there as someone we thought was going to make the bullpen. Now, from the performance of a Max Kranick and the stuff that he has and the velocity that he's throwing at, it seems as though he's going to be that guy in the bullpen. And I don't know about you, and I don't know about everyone else in the chat. You can let everyone know. I'm ecstatic from what I've seen so far. I know it's spring. I know it's potentially guys going to be bagging groceries soon, what have you. That's fine. But I like the presence that I'm seeing. I like the stuff that I'm seeing. And I'm very high on what this person, that being Max Kranick, can provide for this bullpen, throughout the season, but especially in the early going.
Yeah. And Carson checking in saying Pitch Profiler has been my Bible of greatness since 2022, legendary source. And I think it was
I feel
Armand,
bad that I didn't have it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Armand saying Pitch Profiler is fucking awesome. So
I'm glad I finally found it.
Yeah. 2 folks there who are, really kind of singing the praises. Yeah, look, I think and this is true, yes, from Armand, because of Max's performance. Max Kranick is why I believe Sean Reed-Foley was sent outright waivers. Ibby, I agree. Look, I thought Sean Reed-Foley, the Mets were in a roster crunch. Jose Butto out of options. Sean Reed-Foley out of options. Then you factor in the major league deals to certain players. the Mets were already in this roster crunch with regards to who was going to be in their bullpen. And you look at guys who played major roles for them last year. Daniel Nunez has options. It's like, wow, is this guy going to be a factor or not? At least to start the season, because you can stash him, and some other guys you can't stash. Same thing with Reed Garrett, another person where you can make some moves. We looked at Tyler McGill, who has got himself back into the conversation because of the injuries. But Tyler McGill, no matter how he pitched, no matter who was upset with him, not upset with him, whatever the case was, he was going to AAA because he had an option year left. Thank you. That's the other guy I was thinking. Danny Young, also out of options, who might go ahead and force the issue. And yeah, Zero Cool saying Daniel Nunez has his dead arm still, and I think they're going to take it slow with Nunez. I think that's becoming more evident as well. But look, Sean Reed-Foley is a guy who I thought would make the team purely because he had to, because of this options deal, but also because when he has pitched effectively. He's got good stuff. The problem is he is never healthy. Now, look, Ibby, I do hope from a depth perspective that Sean Reed-Foley can pass through waivers and make it to the minor leagues. Mm-hmm. Now, that is an expiring kind of situation, because if he does, the first time he is called upon, he will be brought up. And then if he is ever need to be sent down again, you're going to have to go through the process again. But my point is, for right now, before the season starts, I would like to have as much depth as possible. So I would like to see him remain with the organization. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think the big positive here is that a guy like Max Kranick, who has had great stuff, who is a converted starter, who can go multiple innings, who has found the uptick in stuff, the uptick in velocity, and the ability to stay healthy pitching in a bullpen role, I think that is the right guy that you go and you make the move for. I think this is smart. And I think, again, it is testing the mettle in a very good way of this pitching lab. And, you talk about the IVB, the induced vertical break. That is one of those new stats or advanced stats that is really all the rage with a lot of talent evaluators as far as pitchers are concerned. And when you look at what some of the Mets players have been able to do in terms of IVB since joining the Mets organization, since the Mets have had this pitching lab, they're making massive strides there. Clay Holmes, who's always been a guy who's down in the zone, sinker slider, 2 elite pitches down in the zone. His induced vertical break is higher than it's been on his 4-seam fastball. That's going to make him a better pitcher. Jonah Tong has shot up the prospect rankings for the Mets because his induced vertical break is like elite level. It's like over 20. I think it's like 25 or something. It's insane. So that is something that a lot of a lot of organizations are looking for right now. And a lot of the best prospects and a lot of the guys with the best arms are really showing out. And again, the induced vertical break is sort of that fastball that rises, or at least looks to the hitter like it's got that rise. Doesn't lose a lot of its height when it comes out of the pitcher's hand. And thank you, D. I was looking for the number, but Kranick, 19 inches of induced vertical break. I mean, that's
his last outing. Yeah, his last outing it was 18.3, but I'm sure it's averaging around 19 based off of all of his outings to this point. So yeah, the stuff is there, man. And I feel like he looks like he has like that presence on the mound, which is something I always look for when a guy has an opportunity to go out there. And the Athletic article written today by Will Salmon, who, again, friend of the show, fantastic stuff as always. Just, again, hitting on the things that Carlos Mendoza has said. He's clearly making the most of his opportunity right now. He's putting himself in a great position. I'm reading some things right now. So, again, I'm trying to better my showing, if you will, when it comes to literature and reading. So you guys don't think I'm a complete moron. But he averaged 96 on the 4-seam on Monday. He's hit 98 at points as well. So they're very excited. They view the sweeper that he's been working on with the pitching coordinator Grayson Crawford as a plus pitch. So all in all, I think everything is there. It's understandable. Look, we all know Reed-Foley has had issues when it comes to health, and it sucks because he does have good stuff, but I understand the move completely. I'm pumped up for Kranick, and Furthermore, I'm very excited about the returns that are starting to show when it comes to this pitching lab.
Douglas Barnes with an interesting question. The teacher can't read?
I can read, okay? I can definitely read, but when my partner over here calls me out in front of 200 people saying that I can't read, it hurt my feelings.
I didn't say you can't read. I said it was very awkward, but then you copied and pasted, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's insane." That's something that an insane person would do.
I'm reading things that are written on the wall and saw. That's what I'm reading over.
Carson with a little bit of a deeper dive. Krennic is averaging 18 to 19 induced vertical break, 20 plus of induced vertical break is elite shape, elite pitch shape. So you add velocity in the mid 90s, and he's on the cusp of getting an insane amount of whiffs, possibly chases with that harder changeup. So that's a really good.
I think he was at like 15%. Let me just say his whiff rate for his last outing was 15%. So he's right. Yeah, it's trending in the right direction. If he starts becoming a guy that's into the 20s, mid 20s, like that's fantastic stuff from a reliever.
And that's one of the things, 20 plus inches of 20 plus of induced vertical break is elite. And that's why I mentioned Jonah Tong earlier, because he's in the 20 plus category. And that's why he has been just an unbelievable, taking this unbelievable leap as far as a prospect is concerned. But it'd be another thing worth noting. I know we talked about him last week, gave him his flowers at the end of the show. Clay Holmes is touching the 18 to 19 elite induced vertical break as well, with his four-seam fastball, which again, once you start to get into the fact that this is a guy who works down in the zone, a guy who has two elite pitches already down in that sinker and the slider sweeper that he throws. I mean, to be able to get anything that's above average in terms of induced vertical break for Clay Holmes is going to be tremendous, because he's changing eye levels. And I know we're getting a little in the weeds on this stat that maybe a lot of people aren't super familiar with. But one, this is where baseball is trending from a pitching perspective right now. And so we're trying to do our best to go ahead and educate where we can. But the other part of it, Ibby, that I think is important is this question from Carlos Ramos, who's saying, I'm honestly asking, not trying to be sarcastic, are we placing too much value on how pitchers perform in spring training? Then says, thanks for taking my call. The reason why I bring this up is because I don't think so. You just have to do a little bit of a deeper dive. You have to not poo-poo the advanced statistics or some of the stuff when you're looking at the traditional numbers. They kind of don't matter as much. And what I mean when I say that is, yeah, if Clay Holmes is pitching against a bunch of guys in the Astros organization who are going to be in Double-A in a week, maybe the ERA and the strikeouts don't matter. But when you're looking at the whiff rate, the induced vertical break, all the under the hood stuff, that's when you can start to say, you know what, the results don't matter. The ERA, the runs, some of that stuff doesn't matter. What we need to see in spring training, especially from guys who are making the leap from the bullpen to the starting rotation, or guys like Krennic who are trying to solidify themselves as a guy, then you're not putting too much stake in how they're performing in spring training. You just have to look under the hood. I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that, I'm not here, counting home runs. Like, look, am I like to change the conversation a little bit? Like Jose Siri is one of the top guys in Major League Baseball right now from a spring training perspective in terms of home runs. Does that mean he's going to lead the league in home runs? Is that what I'm saying? No, it's not. But I like that he's able to, find himself a little bit, and he's able to put the ball over the fence and find a little bit of a groove. And look, do things change when you face better pitching? We're going to find out what these people or where these players land when they're starting to face guys that are trying to really ramp up and get ready for the season. We'll see what happens when he's facing a much better starter, as opposed to facing like the guy that John just said, who's going to be in Double-A or Single-A for Houston. What's going to happen when Siri has to face Framber Valdez? Like, we'll see what happens. Like, it's a different story. It's a different type of pitcher. So those things, it's the under the hood stuff from the pitching standpoint. It's going out there and finding a little bit of a rhythm and just finding that swing from a hitting standpoint. It's not so much the overall end piece. So yes, does it suck? Like, case in point, Tyler McGill. We're tired of him, but it's frustrating beyond all hell that he goes out there and throws 40 pitches to get through 2 and 2/3 innings. But some of the under the hood stuff, like it's there. It's like you just got to find on finding the plate. Like that's a big ask when it comes to him. But some of the other stuff, it's there. And it's like when you look at Pitch Profiler, who shows you the things from McGill, it's like, can this guy just find some freaking consistency and find the plate? Because if he would, we wouldn't be tired of him. But the reason why we're tired of him is because he can't find the plate and he wears himself out after 3 innings. It's like you have the stuff. You got 47 pitches to work with, but we can't see you actually succeed because you can never get through the 3rd inning. So it's like under the hood, it's like great, but with a guy like McGill, it's like you got to be able to, not throw 40 pitches in 2 innings. Like you got to be able to, manage yourself a lot better. Otherwise, that under the hood stuff goes by the wayside because you can't actually work deeper into games, which then hurts us more than helps us. So there's a lot of give and take, but we're on the same page.
Absolutely. This is a good one from Carson saying more nerd shit for you. There's also VAA, which is vertical approach angle, which is the angle the pitch breaks over the plate from the release height. Kranick has a lower arm angle, so his induced vertical break is a bigger emphasis. So in other words, the distance that it's traveling from the release point has a higher emphasis for a guy like Kranick because of his release point being lower.
And this is why I appreciate Carson so much, because does some of this stuff, like the real, like deep under the hood stuff, is it still a little bit beyond me? I can admit yes, because I don't dive that deep sometimes. If I really want something, I will, and I'm always willing to learn. But I appreciate comments like this that paint the picture for everyone else, not just me and or John, but everyone in the comments who might not know exactly what it is. But a simple comment like this paints the picture so you have better understanding, because it's becoming more and more of the norm in the game.
Absolutely. And Jeff Cohen saying, sorry, Carson, I have no clue what that means. Odd villain, summing it up. It means ball go vroom. Let's, and you know what? There are some very equally important comments taking place.
Ball go far.
Don't want to lose this one from Zero Cool. Max Kranick. That's a 1907 name. I agree. We can talk all we want about induced vertical break and VAA and, BABIP and all this stuff. But, jump back to the fact that this guy has a name that makes him feel like a time traveler. And I think that that's important too. Ibby, where do you want to go next? Oh, actually, real quick, shout out to David Burnett, who said, hi guys, LGM, I switch over from Twitter. Welcome to David, jumping over from Twitter.
Former winner of one of our contests. Welcome, David.
Yes, absolutely. And I did see David's comment earlier from the Twitter side, and that was the one that made me think. It's just sometimes they get lost in the shuffle a bit more. So thank you for switching over during the break. Thank you for joining us, being with us, and congratulations once again on being the contest winner from back in the day. Ibby, do you want to go to Jose Siri first or Brett Baty first? You're probably going to say Brett Baty for last because you're a sick bastard.
Let's talk about Jose Siri.
God damn it. I shouldn't have asked you.
No, I mean, I'm pumped up when it comes to Siri. Like we talked a little bit about it last week, and I know I was catching some shit from commenters on the TikTok side when we were talking about Jose Siri and how we were excited about the home run and everything. And the comment was like, something passive aggressive where it's like, relax, dude. He's a 180 hitter. Who gives a shit? Like something along those lines. And I was like, I understand, man, that this doesn't matter in the long scope of anything. But I also said in the clip where it's like, I know this guy's going to make us frustrated a good portion of the season too, because you see what he has from a talent perspective and how you think this guy could be really special if he could put the bat to ball on a more consistent basis. But that's just not who he is. But I think for what he provides, which is elite defense, and we're not asking him to bat 4th, 3rd, 2nd, to be the protection of Soto, to lead off. Like, we're not asking any of that.
No, he's going to hit 9th probably for the majority of the season.
Go bat 8th or 9th, wherever it is that they want him. Go up there, do what you got to do, swing for the fences, make hard, attack the strike zone, make hard contact the way we want you to. And then most of all, make sure you stay healthy enough to play fantastic defense, because that's ultimately what you're here for. The fact that you can do other things, like put the ball over the fence and steal 20 plus bags, is fantastic. But it's not make or break when it comes to your 8 or 9 hitter in baseball. It's not. Do you like a guy that can turn over the lineup? Sure, of course, because that gives you more opportunity to give the lineup more opportunities to do damage for you. But a guy like this, when the ball's in the strike zone, I do think that he's going to do maximum damage as we're seeing so far. Do I think he's going to hit 30 home runs? I won't go that far, but like I said last week, this is a guy that I'm excited about from an energy perspective, from a vibes perspective. We're talking about vibes when it comes to Jose Iglesias for the first half hour of the show. A guy like this brings vibes. He brings energy. He brings FU energy, which is something the Mets fans always want. So you have him and Winker on this team from a defensive perspective, from a DH perspective, like all those things wrapped up. This is a guy that I still believe, like I said last week, can be a cult favorite type. And the fact that he's dominating right now in the spring is great. Finding a groove is great. Let's just try to find a little bit more consistency, bring it to the regular season so you can become even that much more of a contributor for this team. He's going to be one regardless, but if he can provide even more, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and look, he's not doing anything right now that is not in line with what he has done before. And what I mean, as far as that's concerned, is nobody is looking at him and saying, wow, this guy really has turned a corner. No, this is who he is. And what he is to Danette and Anthony, who I believe is a first-time commenter. And
great comment. And I love rainbow cookies.
I was going to say, shout out to the rainbow cookie, because the rainbow cookie, cookies. A very underrated cookie in the dessert world.
Yes.
Elite defense and huge ready-for-the-moment power. Yes. And with that,
it's a great comment. Yeah.
Does it come with, to Michael's point, Jose swing hard in case you hit it, Siri? It does.
Sure.
But that's his game. But you know what else is his game? Playing unbelievable defense. And look, this is something that will go past some of you who aren't video game players, and you're going to say video games are not real life. I understand that. But Armand says, real talk, Siri is a stud. MLB The Show, the ratings just came out for MLB The Show 25. 97 fielding, 99 arm. That is out of 100. And you're going to say, why am I bringing this up? It's video games. It's not real life. Ibby, that is tied for the highest fielding and arm rating in the game across every player, across every team in the game, period. And so, again, it's not real life. I understand that. I'm not confusing the two. But when you look at values being assigned to these players and you just look at like, okay, how good is this guy on defense? He is, somebody said this last week or 2 weeks ago, Andrew Jones. That's how good he is on defense. He is elite. He is best defensive center fielder in baseball at one of the most important / hardest positions to play. Like, that's what he brings. And he's also a guy who can hit 25 bombs because he's done it before. Last year, in the worst offensive season of his career, from a batting average perspective, he still hit 18 home runs. So if you're going to give me, let's just call it 15 to 22 home runs, something like that, or 15 to 25 home runs, and play defense at a level that a video game rates you as the best defender in the sport, I'll take that every time. So this is not anything that's different. This is not us Mets fans going, oh, we've got a guy, we're going to unlock him to do something different. No, what he already does is good enough when you've got Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos. You don't need him to be anything more than what he is. Right. What he is very good.
And again, like when you're in a better lineup, you don't have to be something that you're not. And again, like he took it upon himself in those rough Tampa Bay lineups, which like last year wasn't the greatest. So you look at it like that, you're like, maybe I got to do more, and maybe that changes approach a little bit. Maybe that makes things worse a little bit. But here, again, like you can just go out there and you can be yourself. So when I see things that were posted, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, where somebody from, I guess maybe it was a Tampa paper that was saying that, you know, the Rays got tired of the approach of Siri from this playground perspective of how to play the game. And it's like, well, here, like, I don't mind that. I don't mind the fact that you want to be out there and you want to be that type of player who just wants to go out there and have fun and provide something that, others on this team don't necessarily provide. So it kind of fits and it helps loosen things up for everyone else. And I think a player like that can succeed on a winning on a winning club in a given year. So I think that he fits well. I think that he's going to provide enough. And again, he's still, in my opinion, a part of said platoon with Tyrone Taylor. But would it shock me if Siri gets, 75% of the playing time? No, it wouldn't. Would it shock me if he loses that spot at some point during the season? No, it wouldn't. Wouldn't shock me at all. But I do think that, when it comes to defensive purposes, you're going to see him 9 times out of 10.
I agree. And look, Tyrone Taylor is no slouch, but I think that Tyrone Taylor is no slouch defensively is what I mean to say. But I think Tyrone Taylor is better served to be a fourth outfielder, the true fourth outfielder on this team. I think Jose Siri.
That's why they went out and got Siri.
Exactly. To force Tyrone Taylor back into the fourth outfielder role. Otherwise, they don't go and get Siri. Now it's all on Tyrone Taylor. And obviously, again, to a lesser extent, you see what Acuna can do if you need somebody out there, if neither guy's hitting. You see what Jet Williams could do if neither guy is hitting and Jet Williams is ready to come up. I've said on this show before, I don't think that you can have a full-time, long-term center fielder that is the height of Jet Williams and Luis Angel Acuna. I think they're both a little too small. I say that with respect because they're both basically my height. And I play a mean outfield, but I'm also not a Major League Baseball player, so it's a little different, right? Ibby, I think this is a good one. Carlos Ramos has been banging this drum, and I think it's fair. He said, I need to become Jose Siri's agent, which is, an aside. But he says, Jose Siri will hit 20 plus home runs, and 62 RBIs, batting 8th for the Mets in 2025. I mean, when you look again at the numbers that he has produced over the course of his life, those are right around where you would expect it. And I think that that's something that you can hang your hat on, right? At the best season he's had in terms of RBI were 56. That was 2 years ago. So 62, a lot of that is the function of the lineup, right? RBIs aren't necessarily a measure of what you can do a lot of the times. It's a measure of the lineup. But I think it's safe to say that a Mets lineup that includes Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto is better than any lineup the Rays have ever put out since Jose Siri has been on the team, is probably better than any lineup the Rays have ever put out ever. So I just think when you look at it from that perspective, it's not insane to see this guy hitting 20 plus home runs and driving in somewhere around 60 RBI. And again, if you're doing that batting 8th or 9th and it comes with elite defense, I'm not going to be mad at that. I don't care if he bats 150. You're muted again. Dirty bastard.
Based off of the projections, and I'm on Fangraphs right now, just looking at whether it's Fangraphs or Steamer or Zips or ATC or the Bat X, I'm looking at all these, and it's about an average of anywhere from like 15 to 17 home runs, around 50-ish RBIs. The average floating between 210, 215. And then, of course, the biggest one, the strikeout rate, which is at, an alarming 36%. But I think that, with that, I still feel that he can do enough damage where it's going to be enough for him to maintain his time. And I saw that one comment in here, which I have to say the name because it was hysterical and I don't want to butcher it.
Just go for it. Just
Chad Thundercock over here saying how Siri
you're allowed to
lineup by June 1st.
You're allowed to say that because that is his government name.
Well, I'm allowed to say it. So, Chad, Mr. Thundercock, I appreciate you being here, and I don't doubt the comment if things go south because, like I said, I do think that he's still part of a platoon, and that Tyrone Taylor is still going to get his playing time. It might be based off of matchups or what have you, but I do think that you're going to see plenty of Jose Siri in general. I just hope that the offense doesn't go on these long-term droughts, because I do think that having that power at the bottom half of the lineup will go very far for this team.
A lot of really good comments I want to get to. First one here from Michael Segrave. It says there will be a few dust-ups, melees, Donnybrooks, because of some of the hijinks of Jose Siri and Jesse Winker and some of the folks. And I just love using some really great terminology for fights. Dust-ups, melees, and Donnybrooks are just, it's like, shenanigans, tomfoolery. Like they're just some terms that go along with the Max Krennic existence. Odd Villain called the rainbow cookie an elite Italian pastry, and I think that is the best way to describe that wholeheartedly.
Love it.
We have James Dowling saying
JD.
coming in late. Welcome. Doesn't matter if you're late. It's all good. Random question. You guys on Blue Sky haven't been on Twitter or other meta social things for a bit now. Yes, indeed. We are on Blue Sky as we try to keep up with all of the trends. We're at Til Mets Do Us Part.bsky.social. Their handles are a little odd over there, but basically if you search Til Mets Do Us Part, you will find us over on Blue Sky. Ibby, we have a super chat from our friend Hebrew Hammer. Shout out to Hebrew Hammer saying, hey, what's up, guys? What up to you? He says, I'd like to see Canario play. I think he can make the outfield given all the injuries. He's young and he's got a lot of talent. Canario came over from the Cubs. They basically DFA'd him. Mets traded for him last week. He's a guy who has not gotten a lot of opportunities. I believe still 24 years old. Ibby, he is out of options. So we talk about that roster crunch. We talked about it from the standpoint of the pitching staff, specifically in the bullpen. But he is a guy who the Mets traded for knowing that he was out of options. And I think that's because they know that Brandon Nimmo's foot is not 100% recovering from plantar fasciitis. And I think they know that Starling Marte may never fucking walk again. I have no idea. I think there is a better than 50% chance that Canario is on the opening day roster for either Marte or Nimmo. I would say Marte right now if you put a gun to my head.
I think that Canario definitely, and again, thank you, Hebrew Hammer, for the 5. I definitely believe that Canario has a shot at this, not only for the Nimmo injury, which look is starting to become a little bit concerning from being able to be out there on a consistent standpoint so he can get prepped and ready properly for the season. But I don't know what. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I should say that I don't have any trust in Starling Marte right now. Like the soreness and everything that's going on. Like I feel like he's opening the season on the IL. Like that's the way I'm operating. That's the way I'm looking at it, because I think that the Mets felt that way a handful of weeks ago when they make this deal, because they said, let's get a guy that we can bring in here. As David Stearns has said before, the opening day roster is not set in stone. It's one day. Things change. So don't get all up in arms when you see certain names or you don't see certain names. He made that point he made sure to hammer home that point when he was on Meet at the Apple a couple of weeks ago. So when I hear that, I think of players like this making said 26 man. So is it possible? 100%.
It's similar.
I think
it's similar to what I said before about Jose Urena maybe making the team instead of AJ Minter, where it's like, listen, Minter's going to be here for the long haul this season. Minter is coming off of an injury. He's a little slower to start. You might want to get him some more reps. He might miss the first, couple weeks. And it's like, don't get up in arms about it. Now, I could see why people might be more upset about that one, because Minter was signed to be a big part of our of our bullpen just this year. But again, don't get too hung up on the details. It's just one roster out of whatever. It's going to go through so many machinations. And I think it is an even better point, though, when related to this comment from Hebrew Hammer, because I think, honestly, Ibby, the way that people should be excited about seeing a guy like AJ Minter enter our bullpen and set up for Edwin Diaz, I think people are equally down on Starling Marte still being a part of this team. And I don't mean to be harsh when I say that, because seems like another dude who's good in the clubhouse and all that stuff. But he's just, at this point, he's well past this point of being a functional major leaguer. I think this might be Starling Marte's last year in baseball, the way his injuries have gone. So
the conversation that we had last week is like, as the week has gone on, I feel more and more. Look, things can change, obviously. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But the way I'm looking at it right now, like when we talked about him being cut at some point and just eating the money, I think they'll try their best to do what's best for him so he's not embarrassed. But I do feel that that is a strong possibility, especially when it comes to the idea of roster flexibility. Because I don't know if the guy's going to be on the IL the entire year, but I do think that this is something that becomes much more louder as the days go by. Because who knows when this guy's going to be able to truly ramp up, if he's going to be able to at all. So I do think that the whole idea of DFAing him becomes that much more of a possibility.
I think it will. I think that noise is going to get louder. I think that's a big reason why the talks of Marte. This is great. Zero cool. Marte's last year in baseball was 2022. Zero. That was fucking great.
That would be commented. That's a good one. That's a good one.
There's been a lot of really good ones.
There's a lot of good ones. That's a good one.
Odd villain. Marte got a peg leg. He on that pirate shit. No, like GSD says it from Twitter. This is what I was going to bring up. Do you think do you think Marte talks injury as to not be traded tactic? No, I just think that like he can't be traded because he's always hurt. I think that's the situation. I think the Mets are trying to not embarrass him. I think Marte's been a good major leaguer for a very long time. Marte was good for us in 2022. And I think the Mets are trying to do right by him, realizing that he has a diminished role as basically the short side of a DH platoon, but he's not necessarily even healthy enough to do that, which is why I think the trade conversation started. But then if he's not healthy enough to be traded, eventually he may have to get DFA'd. You know, you don't want to embarrass him in that regard, but what are you going to do? And this, I was hoping that Carson would post this again because I didn't have it in front of me. He brought it up last week. There was a quote that said the Mets are confident Marte can physically be a major leaguer still. That is fucking insane.
That's a cry out to like, guys, this guy can still, anybody want to trade for him? Like, we think he can still play. Anybody want him? Anybody want him? Because we sure shit don't. Like, that's where it is. Especially when a guy that's making $20 million. I know that's a point that Carson always makes. I'm not trying to take it from him because it's his point to make. But, you know, if a guy's making that much money, I sure as hell hope that he can still be a major league ball player. Like, it's wild. It's a wild statement to make. And, you know, rest in peace to Carson's mentions when people were attacking him about knee soreness for about a good, 3-4 days.
Odd villain. What the fuck does that even mean? It's true. It's wild. It's wild. Charlie, if Marte's legs were in the same shape as his arms, he'd never have a problem.
It's true.
Odd villain follows it up. Guys, he can still hold a bat. Trust me. Go ahead and stand there. Him. It's fine.
He's like Henry Rowan Gardner in the box. Just stand there. That's all he's got to do.
Yeah. I mean, like it's wild. I mean, this is a fair one from Carlos. It's twofold. Remember, Marte is Soto's cousin, and they're close. Don't be surprised if Marte is a Mets player till the end of the season. I'm not saying they wouldn't trade him or DFA him outright, but maybe he's kept around just because of Soto being in his first year with us. Yeah, I think the DFA is different than the trade, to just talk about it, in two separate breaths. Look, Soto has been around baseball a long time. Marte's been around baseball a long time. These guys are both professionals. Soto did not come here to play with Marte. Marte's in the last year of his deal. If the Mets could ever trade Starling Marte for anything, they would. Marte would be happier. He'd get more playing time. Soto would get over it. That's the trade avenue. But I think there is something to be said about the DFA avenue, Ibby, because if he is at all healthy at any point, and even just hitting enough, knowing that he's not going to live up to the value of the contract at $20 million, but also understanding that this is the last year of that contract, I could see the Mets not DFAing him simply because he's doing enough. It's 1 year and then it's over anyway. And there is this connection with Soto and they don't want to embarrass him. So I think those thoughts are just in two separate points, but I think Carlos does make a good point overall with those comments.
No, I agree. And I think it's definitely something that is, it definitely creeped into my brain when Soto was landing here. I was like, does this change anything when it comes to Marte, relationship, things of that nature? But no, I think that no matter what, and they look, they even after the fact, they had said to him, like, look, we're going to do our best to take care of you. and give you an opportunity to potentially be traded elsewhere, or letting you know, or being upfront and honest about it. So I definitely think it's on the table, and I think ultimately it's going to end up reaching that point unless he shows that he is healthy and he can provide. Because if he's not, when it comes to the way David Stearns likes to churn this roster, this 26, like if you take away even the smallest amount of flexibility, it doesn't fly. So I really think that unless he shows 85% health at least, like he's gonna be shown the door. I truly believe that.
Carlos Ortiz disagrees. He says, I don't think Marte will be, and then fixed it, DFA'd. Ibby, just to put it in perspective, I think if Marte has the kind of season he had last year, which was up and down health-wise, but when he was in the lineup, he didn't hit for a lot of power. Carson has talked about that, how, his power is basically gone because his legs aren't really under him anymore, but he did hit, and he did especially hit left-handed pitching. If he has a year like that, while frustrating, he will be on the team for the whole season. But
Right.
if he has a year where he's not healthy for the bulk of it and then comes back and he's not effective when he is healthy, I think that that's something where you start to look at him being in danger of being designated for assignment. Let's talk about the other guy that we teased heading into the second half of the show, which is Brett Baty, your favorite, my least favorite person on the Mets. Nope. Get that out of here. Get that out of there. Brett Baty is hitting like 400 or whatever. He's hitting for some power. He's driving the ball a bit more, lifting the ball a bit more. All the things that Brett Baty does in spring training seemingly every year, all the things that Brett Baty does in AAA every year, all the things that Brett Baty has not done at the major league level. But I think at this point, also not true. Ibby, I think at this point, he has the inside track, that's Brett Baty, to making this team. He has been the best, most consistent offensive player in terms of a guy trying to make the team when you compare him to Acuna, when you compare him to Mauricio, who I think needs to start in AAA just to shake the rust off. Jet Williams is not going to be here yet. You look at the Waldens of the world, Jared Young, and all these people, they're not going to make the team. Young still has options. He's more of a first base, third base, corner outfielder anyway. When you're looking at the final spot on this roster, I think it is Baty's spot to lose. I don't think he's going to have it for long, but I think he is going to make the team. I think he's doing too much and the other guys are doing too little. I also think, like I said earlier, he doesn't have anything left to prove at AAA. He hits AAA pitching every time they send him there, whereas Acuna hasn't really hit in AAA. I think he was a little bored in AAA. I think that's part of it. But like Charlie said, Acuna needs a little development still. Baty needs to prove it in the majors. If between the two, Baty stays, Donovan Walden, ? No, but I think maybe not prove is the right word for Acuna. I just think he has that, like, there's something he can learn in AAA. Like Acuna can go to AAA and he can play third base, a position he's not really played a lot of, so that he can learn that. Acuna can go to AAA and, improve on his plate vision or whatever the case may be. Acuna is younger and has more room to grow into a potential role. Baty needs to do it and needs to do it now. And I think that's what's going to give him the inside track for sure.
And look, I think that, some of the stuff that was put out today in The Athletic as well, talking about, Baty's time at second base and, the overall offensive output that he's put out so far, and trying to get comfortable, improving worth around the diamond, second base, third base, taking ground balls at short, even though we don't expect it to happen. But the fact is, and I think he was also on SNY, I think I saw a clip talking about how he would accept a utility type of role where he can move around the diamond, not necessarily be a starter, but, still provide for this team. Look, I know I'm the one on this show that backs Brett Baty more than John, more so than Carson, who's already saying, coming in the comments, Baty talk, geez, y'all really forced me to watch that awful hockey team of mine right now, aren't you? So, look, I get that, Carson's point that he has made on Mets Twitter about how a player has been shown, opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and then performs at the spring level. But then when it's time for, the bright lights and it's go time, it reverts back to the player that we've always seen. I understand that hesitation. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to root for this kid to provide something. And again, I shouldn't call him a kid because he's 24, 25 years old, loses that prospect status. You kind of have an idea of what a guy might be at 600 at bats. But the fact that he is providing numbers, and shout out to Isaac Groffman over on Twitter. This was part of going at, a back and forth with Carson. And it's not attacking Carson. It's more so just saying how some things have changed year over year from 24 to 25. The average launch angle from, one season was 9.7. Now it's 12.12. The max exit velocities are nearly the same at around 111. The hard hit rate, 50% this year in comparison to 33% last year. The line drive rate this year, 37.5. Last year, 16.9. The barrel rate's a big one here. 5.3%, 5.36% last year. This year, 25%. So again, these are drastic improvements. And I understand being hesitant. I do. And I'm not saying that this guy is going to be a world beater. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm hopeful that that light does turn on for a former top prospect. I hope it's there, and I hope that he's just someone that needed more time. And you could say, well, he's got 600 at-bats. That's more than enough, and blah, 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 all that stuff. I want the success to be there because I think in what that 90th percentile could be, not saying he'll ever reach it. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying like that idea of it at least is something that I would much rather watch than a Jeff McNeil.
Right.
In this situation. And I'm not trying to turn this into a bash Jeff McNeil. We do that enough. I don't want to do that for 15. I don't want to do that. My point is I'd much rather see Baty play than a McNeil. That's all I'm saying there because it comes from a development standpoint as well. I want to see that he can do this. But can he play second base? It's still a long ways to go. I said last week, Luis Angel Acuna is a much better option as a second baseman. We talk about defense. There are better options than Brett Baty at second base. That's basically saying, can Brett Baty be what a Daniel Murphy was? And I don't even know if he can do that. We'll find out in due time if that's even a possibility. Murph stunk at second, but he hit the shit out of the ball. So that's a different story. So you're providing on one side of the ball. Same thing with Jose Siri. Provides incredible defense in center, has his ups and downs and his problems at the plate, but he can still put the ball over, the fence. So all in all, I'm excited from what Brett Baty has shown us to this point. Will he be able to be a second baseman? I still have strong reservations on that from a team that's building a pitching staff based off of the ground ball. I don't know if that's the wise move. Can he provide something as a role player across the diamond potentially that fills in at third when Vientos has to DH or where they want to move things around from a defensive perspective that they think is better for them? I do think it's possible. Is he going to be a top flight player for this team? I don't know. I've said before on record, I think that he's someone that might find better success elsewhere. I hope that he's taken all things that have been said about him to heart and he's going out there and he can provide. But to Carson's credit, he has to go out there and actually provide when those lights are on. It's great to see this stuff now, but when those bright lights come on, if you make this roster and you're given a start at second base, third base, as a DH, whatever it may be, you got to perform because everyone is going to be hyper-focused on you the second you get that opportunity because you've been given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity.
I think a lot of people agree with you, evidenced by what's going on in the comments. I'll highlight a few of them that I think really speak to that. Carlos Ramos saying Acuna proved more at the MLB level in 3 weeks last season than Baty has proven in 4 chances now. I think that's fair. I think it's harsh. But it's also fair.
I think it's fair.
Or rather not hard. It's blunt, but it's fair. Zero Cool saying Baty either makes it and becomes a 10-year starter or he becomes 25-year-old Julio Iglesias. I think he means Jose Iglesias.
Or maybe he means Julio. Who knows?
Or maybe Julio Iglesias. I don't know. Bottom line, Baty needs a shorter leash this year. He's had plenty of chances so far. That's from James Dowling. Richard Zucker saying Baty will be used to up his trade value. So, I think a lot of people, Zero Cool saying Baty is on his last chance to be somebody. That's for sure. So, I think that's, people are divided on Baty, but I think the overall sentiment in the comments is fair. The only thing that I'll say, you're more of a Baty fan, obviously, than I am. I don't want it to be misconstrued like Carson says here. If you ask Twitter, as far as Carson's concerned, he's rooting against Baty. He wants to steal his new car. Drastic improvements after 10 games of spring training. Cool story, bro. Ibby, I always say this. At the end of the day, I'm a fan, and I'd rather be happy than right. I do this. We do this together. We have a platform. People want to hear what we think. I don't think Baty is good. I think Baty is the definition of a 4A player. If Baty turns into anything but that, I will happily say I was wrong. Everybody who thought he was good is right. And now he's on the team, and that's terrific. So I don't take any enjoyment out of these guys who are on my team not being good and not living up to potential. But at this point, Baty has done this in AAA before. He has done this in spring training before. 10 games of spring training, like Carson says, is not enough to make me a believer. This is what he does. So I need to see it when the lights are bright. I need to see it when the games count. I need to see it when the games matter. I'm not going to root against him. That's insane. I'm not going to root against him to make the team. I'm not going to root against him certainly when he's on the team. All that said, I do think, like I opened this segment with, I think Baty has the inside track right now. Baty's older. Agree. He's older than Acuna. He has been through more spring trainings than Acuna in terms of the big league spring trainings. He's made teams before. He's fallen just short of making teams before and had to go out and prove it to start the year and then got a call up quick. Acuna has not had to do a lot of this. Now, Acuna might be the ultimate bright lights guy. He might be a bigger prospect than we assume. He might be exactly what we assume he is. He might be worse. I don't know what any of these guys are going to be. But I know that right now, and this is shout out to Ryan Finkelstein over at Locked On Mets, he's been banging this drum for a couple weeks. Brett Baty is just the best suited to win this competition because of the things I mentioned. Being older, having more experience at AAA, having nothing to prove, having more experience making a team, not quite making a team, all of that stuff. And right now, he is hitting better, and he does deserve to make it. If spring training ended today, he'd be on the team. And so I know there's a several more weeks to go until spring training ends, and things could change. Now, I, like you, think Acuna is a better fit roster-wise. Yes. But, and this is another shout out to Ryan Finkelstein at Locked On Mets, he does make a good point when he says the Mets don't really need a backup shortstop, at least to start the season, because Francisco Lindor likes to play. He likes to play a lot. I think you can eventually get him to play a bit less, and I think that's going to be more important for him moving forward in terms of playing 160 games or 162 games, but you might not have to do that right this second, and you certainly don't have to do that to start the year. So if Baty is your backup shortstop in case of emergency break glass where, the game is 12-1 either way, he can go and stand out at shortstop. It's not going to make a difference. I don't think that's going to hurt anybody. So from that perspective, I just think he's better suited to win the job. It is very clear that Ibby is either frozen or he is doing the best staring contest ever. We're coming up on 2 hours, so we are going to get out of here shortly, but I'm going to try my damnedest to not get out of here without Ibby being a part of the show. There he is. He's back. Zero Cool saying, please do not put the whammy on Lindor. Please. I'm not. I'm just talking about it from a perspective of, what needs to be said and what doesn't need to be said. Ibby, what I was saying was, I don't know when you cut out, but one of the points I was making was Brett Baty can be your in case of emergency break glass shortstop that comes in a game that's, 12-0 in either direction and stands out there for an inning or two to get Lindor off of his feet. I think eventually you want to get Lindor playing less games in the field than he is playing right now. If it were me and I was running the team, I would start Lindor on that trajectory this season because you have a guy in Acuna who can play very good defense at shortstop, and I'd put him on the roster, and that's how I would do it. but I'm not David Stearns. I'm not the president of baseball operations. It's not up to me. So you don't have to start that this year, and you don't have to start it certainly at the beginning of the season. That's my point, where, Lindor can play every game for the first couple months. He's going to want to anyway. So you don't really need a true backup shortstop. Now, that's not the way that I would assemble the team. But I do think for all of those reasons and everything I said right before you froze, I think Baty's going to make the team. I do. I think it's going to be him.
I think he is. And I hope that he can actually provide something. And if not, it's been fun, but this is probably like the end of that rope, and it's going to end for him in that sense. And, I just want the guy to succeed because I want my team to succeed. If he's good, it helps the team win ball games. That's what I want ultimately. I think it's what we all want. But I also agree with people in the comments that say, look, this could be an opportunity for him to prove worth. And then if others prove worth down low, it makes things a little bit easier to move pieces and move guys. I know that as someone said in the comments, like Miami or Florida, whatever they're called now, with Marlins, have had interest in Baty before. Could you work him in a deal if he's red hot with others to get a pitcher? Of course, all those things are on the table. And I'm not saying that, no, you cannot include Brett Baty in a deal if it's going to land me Sandy Alcantara. Like, no, it's like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I'll pack his bags. We'll drive down together. But no, I think that all those things are definitely on the table. But for now, he's here. I agree with you. He has the inside track. And hopefully, if given the opportunity, he can actually perform.
I agree with this comment from Carson where he says, Brady, I keep saying Brady. Baty lacks the aura to prove me wrong, but go ahead and try it, Brett. That's kind of where I'm at. Carson and I have really been in lockstep with the Baty conversation for a while, but this is a good counterpoint from Zero Cool. Mike Schmidt's first good season was at 25, Matt Williams at 24, Nettles at 26, third baseman take a while. Not saying Baty is capable of that, but he might still be a starting player. I think that's a fair assessment. Again, I disagree, but I can't say that that's an insane take. So I think that's a good counterbalance as far as that's concerned. Ibby, before we get out of here, there are two more things I'd like to get to rather quickly. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about David Peterson. We're at the 2-hour mark. So
yeah,
but David Peterson is an important part of this starting rotation, whether you like it or not. And he's even more important with the injury to Minaya and Montas. And so, you have it in the scroll that he's the key. Mm-hmm. And I think in a lot of ways you might be right. And that scares me a bit because I'm not as down on David Peterson as I am on Brett Baty, but David Peterson has scared me a lot and I don't love him as a player. I know the results were there, but some of that under the hood stuff last year was not good last year. The ERA, the innings, what he did in the playoffs, heroically, very important, coming in big spots, fine. But some of the under the hood stuff was scary. So I still need to see more from David Peterson.
And I think I think it was his last start or 2 starts ago. I know Pitch Profile put out a thing because someone in the comments had asked, hey, can you post Peterson stuff? I think it was like on a Max Kranick one. He said, could you post Peterson stuff? I would love to see it. And he was saying, he was describing like David Peterson doesn't always show out very well when it comes to stuff like this, even though the results are there. So I understand that the underlying stuff is a concern for people, but I do believe he's the key. And this is a shout out to Keith over at Shea & Sons, who had mentioned yesterday or 2 days ago that he thought also that that David Peterson was the most important Met. Like he put it as the most important Met, and I will double check with him to make sure if he meant like the entire team or did he mean the rotation. But he had worded it as David Peterson's the most important Met for this upcoming season. And I can take that and I can run with that because I do think when I say key or you want to use linchpin or something that just really matters in terms of the continuous nature of the rotation or the question marks, I should say, that are around it as well. The fact that he's shown the last season what this pitching lab can provide for him, goes out there, has better presence now, and competes and works through 5-6 innings and gets results. And the strikeouts have been a little bit more so than they were in the past. We've had it year over year where it's like good year, bad year, good year, bad year, good year, bad year. And last year was good. So now it's like this is the downturn. Is this going to be the bad? Do the underlying stuff finally, correct itself? And now we're going to see the bad results because you had the good last year, but we all know baseball catches up to you, things correct. It goes back to the normal, works its way back to the middle. Is that what we're going to get? I think that the importance is very critical. Very critical. And I'm with you where it's like saying that for Peterson is a worry to an extent. But I really liked what I saw from him last year. And I know the defense was fantastic behind him, and they made incredible plays for him to work him out of certain jams. I get that. But I also think that this defense could be even a little bit better this year with some additions and using people in certain spots and certain starts for him, whatever it may be. I like what I've seen. I like what I saw in his last start, 3 innings and 5 strikeouts. Again, the underlying stuff, not the greatest, but good enough in my opinion. And I think that if he can provide every 5th day for this team the way he showed last year, this is the challenge. Can you provide back-to-back years? I'm not saying back-to-back. I'm saying you've provided for this team in the past. 100% you have. But you haven't been able to do it back-to-back years of consistency and keeping good faith and goodwill with the fan base. I think it's finally there. I feel like it's been unlocked. Carson can make fun of me all he wants. That's fine. But I do think that Peterson has something that's needed for this team. And that's, standing from a standpoint of being here for a while now, wanting that success, going out there, having the presence, strikeouts being there. Like, I just think that overall, his success is going to really dictate the overall success of this pitching in general. I think him being successful is going to further breed out in terms of the other successes for the likes of Clay Holmes, a Montas when he comes back, so on and so forth, because it reverts back to that pitching lab. And that's what it really comes down to. Can this pitching lab make David Peterson a back-to-back season provider at a high level for this team? And I, because I believe in Stearns and this lab, believe that that is the case.
I hope so. To borrow Zero Cool's argument for third baseman, left-handed starting pitchers take a while to develop as well. So I don't think it's beyond the scope of possibility. Yes.
I understand apprehension. I do.
I'll take the first.
I understand it.
I'll take the first part of this and agree. His ground ball rate helps immeasurably from Zero Cool as well. I think your point is spot on with regards to the pitching lab of like, if you're relying on the pitching lab to make the likes of Griffin Canning better, then how could you not rely on the pitching lab to make the likes of David Peterson better, who is leaps and bounds better than Griffin Canning in terms of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I agree there. But people start to lose me when they get very bullish on Peterson. And that's when I get scared. Like Zero Cool, dark horse Cy Young candidate. Carlos Ramos, 14 games, 3.47 ERA, averaging 6 2/3 innings per start. Brad, Peterson has a chance to become an ace by season's end. D, I'm not worried at all about Peterson. That sentiment scares me. Now, good. I hope you I can't say you're crazy for feeling that way because we all have our things where we see stuff and I'm very bullish on Clay Holmes being a starter, making the transition. Mm-hmm. So, and there's numbers to back that up, but there's numbers to back up some of what you guys are saying too. But I can't get to that point. Mm-hmm. I do agree with you. And I agree with Keith. Was it Keith or Key who said it? That,
Keith.
That, he is so important because of the state of this rotation and what he's asked to do. And even the fact that he's pushed further as a result of the injuries. And also, let's be honest, he's a 28-year-old pitcher who was drafted and developed by this team where they haven't really drafted and developed a lot of pitching recently. And it would be great for him to go and be the guy that they hope he is, even if it's not an ace, even if he's just a 3. Maybe I'll take a 3. Give me a homegrown 3 at 28 years old.
Yeah.
So I get lost in the, I'm not worried at all sentiment. That's what scares me. That to me, that's too much for David.
I won't go that far. Like I said, I just said, I understand apprehension that you have, that Carson has, that others have had, that others might have for him, because, like I said, he hasn't done it back-to-back years. And this is supposed to be a down year because he had a good year last year. Now it's supposed to be down because that's what his career has been to this point. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to be an ace. I'm glad that people are confident. Like, I love confidence within a fan base. Am I going to go that far? No. But to what John just said, if he can become a staple in the middle of a rotation, a borderline, not saying like an ace stopper, but a guy that goes out there that you have an opportunity to win a ball game because he's going to maintain the score being low to give your offense an opportunity to do some work with an offense now that can give him, 3, 4, 5 runs in a given start where it allows him to relax, go out there, attack the strike zone, not nibble, not get walks, I should say not walk people, and, limit overall damage. Like, I do think that those things are definitely possible. And I think that a better offense is going to go a long way for him as well on the off chance that some of those underlying things do come out and he does get hit a little bit harder. And those balls that are put in play happen to find the hole or happen to find a gap. I do think that the offense now goes even further in helping him right those wrongs, if you will. Obviously, don't go out there and get tattooed every time. But I do think that my worry level on him is not where it was in seasons past. It's come down a lot to the point now where I believe in him at a much higher extent. So if my top end belief is number 5, I would put Peterson right now, for me at least, like I'm sitting at like a 3.5. That's kind of where I am. If 5's the top, I'm at a 3.5.
All right, before we get out of here, let's just really quickly touch on this. I don't want to spend too much time. Rosie K brought this up at the very beginning of the show, saying Andy Martino just had to throw shade on Juan Soto and the Mets. Can't help himself. Basically saying, Juan Soto, look at all the fun he's having. He's adjusting great. He loves life. Everything is great. Oh, my God. Sunshine, rainbow, glitter, unicorns, birthday cake, rainbow cookies, whatever you like. It's all happening.
Love rainbow cookies.
But he misses being a Yankee, and you can tell. This is where Andy Martino loses all of his credibility. Because what's the point of that? You're laughing at some insane comment. Oh, it's Odd Villain, isn't it? It's got to be Odd Villain. It's got to be Odd Villain. Basically,
oh my God.
I did tweet out something. I did tweet out something similar in comment.
Kill me, man.
I did tweet out something similar to what Odd Villain said to Andy Martino when I said, what do you think in a given baseball season, what do you think Andy Martino watches more of? Ooh. Mets games or cuck porn?
Jesus Christ.
So no, I just think, look, this stuff doesn't matter. But because who gives a shit? The contract signed. Juan Soto's here. Juan Soto's great. Juan Soto's going to be here for 15 years. Juan Soto made a boatload of money to be here. Juan Soto does look happy. Juan Soto is already providing, even though the games don't count, like he's showing you how great he is, blah, 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 blah. So what Andy Martino says, whether true, untrue, substantiated, unsubstantiated, whether there's a little glimmer of truth, whether he's got it from good sources, bad sources, on good authority, not whatever, it doesn't matter. But this is where he loses credibility. I mean, because I think that there's been times that I've even shouted him out on this show, even though I think he is a cuck, to use Armand's term here. He's a cuck. No, but I think that there have been times
might lose monetization on this episode.
I don't think so. But there are times when I've said, he's a good reporter. He's just like, his takes are bad. But this is something that he's reporting, and the way he like double and triples down on like the thing with, I told you the Mets were moving on from Pete. I told you so much they were moving on. It's like, dude, just let it go. You were wrong. You either got bad info or whatever. And like, he does this stuff all the time. And this is why you can't take him seriously. That, and the fact that, he's got like Beatles puppets behind him. He just, no. So I don't know what you think about this. I don't know what you can make of this, but I do not. I just don't care, and I wish Andy Martino would go away.
I don't care. I want Martino to go away. He uses opinion, passes it off as fact, and then, like you said, doubles and triples down, cries when people call him out. Ben Yoel, big guy on Mets Twitter, gets a lot of traction on a lot of things that he posts, called him out. Andy jumped into his comments. Ben called him out again, and then Andy ran scared because the things that Ben was saying, while sometimes, yes, Ben can be a little bit abrasive and a troll at some point because he loves his team or what have you, but everything he said about Martino was not incorrect. It was proper. So when I hear or when I see Andy Martino attack someone like Ben to then say that a lot of people in this fan base are good people, but you're the bad person. Meanwhile, this is the guy that blocks all of Mets Twitter because everyone calls him out and everything. So now he only has this echo chamber of people that actually like him, which is very small to begin with. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not backing you. I hate the fact that you say things like this because you want attention and you know that negativity is going to bring you better attention because, God forbid, the Mets are just a good baseball team and Juan Soto's having a blast and Gelbs and Ron Darling about how he's assimilating so well and having fun, and you take that as an opportunity to dig in on something that doesn't matter when it comes to this team. I'm sorry, man. You're just acting like a complete ass. I don't take anything you say serious. I don't need you anymore. And I don't care. Like, usually if you're blocked by someone, like, it sucks because you're missing out on information. But the fact that I don't see his stuff on my timeline anymore is a gift from God, if you will, which is why I asked in our group chat yesterday, like, what did Martino do that has people riled up? And then I found out. And yeah, I don't need it. Screw him. Bye. And that's it.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is it's a really good point on Ben. You know, Ben does troll sometimes. He is inflammatory. He does like to poke the bear. But what he said, and I watched the whole exchange, like what he said to Martino was not that, because Ben is also like, Ben knows his stuff and will be straight laced. And he took that approach to Martino where it was like, hey man, this is what you did. This is what you said. This is how it is. Don't try to run from this. Don't try to twist your words. Don't try to move the goalposts. And then Martino, like you said, backed away, like he's gone. And it's just like, yeah, because he knows. So, you know, look, honestly, I'm blocked by Martino too, probably because I made some kind of joke about him sometime years ago. I would say at this point,
I said his book was shit. That's why he blocked me.
It must be.
That's why.
Who would read his book? Oh my God. Anyway, I would say this to anybody who can hear the sound of my voice or you know, listens to us and values what we say. If you're not blocked by Martino, you should just block Martino because that's how useless he is in the space.
Yes.
Because he is not going to give you anything that you're certainly not going to get from Jeff Passan. He's not going to give you anything from the Mets sphere that you're not going to get from, love him or hate him, John Heyman.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to give you something that you're not going to get from Will Salmon, who is terrific on the Mets beat. And, you know, for my money, up there with the best, if not the best. Manny Gomez, another friend of the show, covers the Mets for NJ Advance, Star Ledger, all that stuff. He's also great. So, and you're not going to get the BS. You're not going to get the talking down to people. You're not going to get that sad, droopy dog bullshit that he does on SNY where he looks like his face is melting. So, you know, you're not going to get that. You're just going to get straight-laced baseball commentary. And honestly, the more we all ignore him, and I know this is hard to do sometimes, but the more we all ignore him, the quicker he'll go away. And he's exhausting. So, Ibby, we're well over 2 hours. We should get out of here. Anything you want to say before we go?
Nothing else. The only thing we didn't talk about Kodai Senga that much in his debut, but the only thing I really want to put on that was I'm happy that he came out healthy. He looked sharp, debuting some new pitches. All in all, I'm pumped up for Senga and his return. And hopefully he can have a couple more starts out there to just work, you know, through his mechanics, get proper, and provide for this team that he wasn't able to provide for last season on a consistent basis that he hoped for. So hopefully his health is all well and good. He works through the rest of the spring, and we get him back up north, all proper for what should be a strong and special season. But other than that, love you guys. Fantastic show today. Just reached, I think we're a shade under 300 people today, which is awesome. Shout out to Hebrew Hammer for the $5 super chat. We appreciate anyone that donates to the show. Helps us greatly when it comes to doing more things for you guys, more giveaways, things of that nature, bettering the show in general. So shout out to every one of you. If you haven't already, make sure you like the video. I think we were 2 likes away from 50. I always like getting to 50 before the show ends. We're at 48. So if you haven't already, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully we can hear from you next week when we're back here for another episode. But other than that, I'll let my partner over there close it out.
I mean, you pretty much hit on everything, but of course, if you missed any of the show, you can go back and watch whatever it is that you missed, whether you got here late or you had to leave early, some combination of the two. We know that 2 hours plus in this case, is a lot of time to dedicate, but shout out to everybody who's been here from the start and has been here all the way through. We appreciate everybody who jumps into the chat, jumps into the comments. Like you said, shout out to Hebrew Hammer, but this video will live forever on our YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Til Mets Do Us Part. So if you missed anything, go back and watch it. We're doing some changes, a little bit of transition, so there might be a little bit of a delay. We'll get into some of the finer points of that when we can with regards to the audio version of the podcast. So for right now, just make sure that you are checking out the YouTube channel, Til Mets Do Us Part. You can also follow us on social media. That is Instagram, it is Twitter, it is TikTok, it is Blue Sky, all at Til Mets Do Us Part. We're going to be working on putting out some different kinds of content, especially on the TikTok and the Instagram and the YouTube short side. Some things coming that way as well. So make sure that you're following us wherever it is you need to follow us to make sure that you never, ever, ever miss a moment of Til Mets Do Us Part. I'm John. That's Ibby. We will see you next week. Peace.